Chapter 2140. Hearing this, Yi Qianqian and Shen Luo and were shocked. At the same time, Shen Luo and felt a chill down his spine. Adult Manting didn't know about little Manting's existence, but little Manting could predict when adult Manting would wake up. Moreover, she kept asking Shen Luo and to only love her, so as to erase the existence of adult Manting. Wasn't she only 12 years old? Why would a 12-year-old girl have such thoughts? One couldn't help but feel fear and trepidation. Seeing Shen Luo's reaction, Shen Jielia seemed to have expected it. He tapped on the notebook with a pen and said slowly, "Of course, this is just my speculation. Adult Manting might not necessarily not know about little Manting's existence. But little Manting's malice towards adult Manting really exists." Shen Luoan said in a low voice, "She doesn't want adult Manting to wake up." In fact, this was understandable. However, little Manting seemed to be a little different from what he imagined. It shouldn't be like this. Shen Jielia was silent for a moment and then said, "Brother, you have to take good care of her. Even if she is only 12 years old, the mentality of an orphan still exists." Shen Luoan frowned. Shen Jielia looked at him and slowly said, "According to incomplete statistics, most orphans are mentally lonely. They are self-abased, selfish, lonely, and yearn for love and care. There's a difference between adult Manting and young Manting. Sister Manting has lived at home for so many years. Compared to He Yunsuan, her state of mind is different. You can't think about Sister Manting's thoughts and focus them on young Manting." Shen Jielia looked at Shen Luo and waited for his reaction. Shen Luoan smiled bitterly. "She is also Manting." "It's not the same," Shen Jielia said. "With split personalities, each person has their own memories, their own personality, and their own thoughts. But between the main personality and the secondary personality, one will be dominant." Hearing this, Shen Luoan felt a little uneasy. Yi Qianqian had already guessed something and exclaimed, "Do you mean that little Manting is now dominant?" Shen Luoan's heart suddenly sank. Shen Jielia was silent for a moment and nodded. "Not necessarily, but based on the current situation, it is only a matter of time before she becomes dominant." Shen Luoan had mixed feelings. "Brother, Big Manting and Little Manting are both Manting, but Big Manting is the real Manting." After saying that, Shen Jielia had no intention of saying anything else. She tugged at Shen Jilia's sleeve and asked, "Is there no way to level the playing field?" Shen Jielia asked, "Is there no way to level the playing field?" "Yes." Shen Jielia looked at Shen Luoan calmly. "Whoever started the trouble needs to end it." When Shen Luoan came out of Shen Jilia's room, he saw Nanny He sitting on the sofa. She was facing the children's toy room, peeling beans. When he saw Shen Luoan coming over, he pointed his chin forward and gestured for him to come over. Shen Luoan walked to the front and saw Shen Manting and the baby sitting on the ground playing. Shen Manting raised her head when she saw Shen Luoan walking over. Her gaze was calm and indifferent. It was very calm. "You came." She got up and stroked the baby's head. "Play by yourself. Mommy has something to discuss with Daddy." Without a doubt, she was the adult Manting. Shen Luoan relaxed slightly and followed her back to the room. Chapter 2141. "Shen Luoan," Shen Manting said and looked up at him. "I just saw the marriage certificate." Shen Luoan paused and looked at her. Shen Manting looked up with an indescribable expression on her face and asked, "Have we registered our marriage?" After a long silence, Shen Luoan replied, "Yes." "Yes." Shen Manting's face was expressionless. She whispered, "What have you done to me in the past 2 years?" "Manting, I didn't. How could I get married to you? How could I sleep with you?" Shen Manting was a little annoyed. She took his hand and walked to the bedside table. She opened the first drawer and took out a row of contraceptive products. "There are 10 in a box. There are only 7 here." Shen Luoan was silent. Shen Manting continued, "This is your house. You can't bring another woman home to spend the night." So when he used it, he must be using it on her. Unbeknownst to her, he had violated her once again. Thinking of this, Shen Manting felt sad. A sense of resistance and grievance followed. Her eyes were sore and tears welled up again. Shen Luoan couldn't help but reach out and hold her in his arms. He called her name. "Manting." Shen Manting didn't resist. She let him hold her and let her hands fall to her sides. Tears welled up in her eyes. She choked and said, "I don't even know when I married you. You are a beast. If I knew, I wouldn't have married you." Beast. When she scolded him, she also used these two words. In the past, his heart would be filled with anger. But 3 years had passed. Shen Luo felt nothing but bitterness in his heart. "Yes, I am a beast," Shen Luo admitted. "But you are already married," he hugged her tighter and whispered. "I can't divorce you. For the sake of the child, for the sake of our parents, for the sake of you and me, I can't divorce you. You are my woman in life and my ghost in death." Shen Manting smiled when she heard this. She struggled but couldn't break free. Shen Luo made up his mind. He hugged her and said firmly, "We are husband and wife. You can hate me, but the child needs a mother." Shen Manting stopped, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "I need you too." Shen Luo's heart skipped a beat as he spoke. Nervous and restless. But after he said that, he immediately felt enlightened. When he was questioned by young Manting just now, his wavering mind was resolved at this moment. He held her in his arms and said with certainty, "I want you." Only a sober Shen Manting was the real Shen Manting. Little Manting was just an accident. Even though he had done a lot of things to take advantage of others in this accident. But from the beginning to the end, he only regarded her as Shen Manting who had lost her memory. In his eyes, she was still herself. Shen Manting was held so tightly that she could even feel the vibration of his chest as he spoke. As soon as he said those 3 words, his mind seemed to be pierced by a scream. Shen Manting felt a little uncomfortable. She reached out and pushed him, saying, "My head hurts." His heart was in a mess in an instant. Anger, grievance, and discomfort immediately assaulted him. Shen Manting was in a trance. She looked at Shen Luo in front of her and subconsciously resisted such negative emotions. Chapter 2142. There was an indescribable tension in Shen Luo's voice. Shen Manting could clearly feel it. Her heartbeat was getting heavier and faster. As she watched Shen Luo's back getting further and further away, her heart gradually became empty. When Shen Luo led Shen Jielia over, Shen Manting's consciousness was on the verge of collapse. Shen Luo came forward to help her up and said, "Manting, wake up. Don't sleep." As he spoke, he gently patted Shen Manting's cheek and shouted, "Wake up." Shen Manting struggled to lift her eyelids, but it seemed that in the depths of her soul, someone was desperately trying to pull her into the darkness. Behind her was a bottomless abyss. Her vision was getting darker and darker. No, she didn't want to go. She didn't want to sleep. There was an inexplicable feeling, strong and clear. She had slept for a long time, and she couldn't sleep anymore. Shen Luo's voice rang in her ears. Shen Manting tried to struggle and raised her hand, but she quickly dropped it. She clearly wanted to reach out her hand, but she suddenly withdrew it. It was her, but it wasn't her. No. Someone was stopping her from touching Shen Luo. Who was it? "He Yunsuan, get out of here." A loud shout exploded in her ears like a clap of thunder. Suddenly, Shen Manting felt her heart clench, and in the blink of an eye, she opened her eyes. The feeling of being pulled faded away, and her eyes slowly brightened. Only then did she realize that she was gasping for breath. Shen Luo was holding her, and in front of him were Shen Jielia and Yi Qianqian. Shen Jilia's face was pale and somewhat solemn. Yi Qianqian, on the other hand, was surprised and worried. She asked nervously, "Sister-in-law, are you okay?" Shen Manting was stunned. When the voice fell into her ears, it seemed that it had taken several turns in her mind before it triggered her reaction. Shen Manting supported her body with her hands and sat up. She looked at Shen Jielia and then at Yi Qianqian and shook her head. "I'm fine." The throbbing pain in her head seemed to have subsided, and the pain had dissipated a lot. "Jielia." Shen Manting looked up and leaned weakly on Shen Luo. She couldn't sit up straight at all. She looked at Shen Jielia and asked, "Whose name were you calling just now?" Shen Jielia looked at Shen Manting and asked, "Do you know who I am?" Shen Manting was stunned. "I know." "Do you know who's behind you?" Shen Manting subconsciously turned her head when she heard that. When she saw him, she asked, "What the hell are you doing?" "There's something wrong with your mind." Do you know that? Shen Jielia asked again. Do you feel strange anywhere? Tell me. Shen Manting vaguely felt something. When she heard this, she was silent for a moment before saying, Am I a little crazy? Otherwise, she wouldn't have done so many things with Shen Luo, and without her knowing. If he had been sober, she might have accepted it, but she would not have been so happy. In those vague memories and feelings, she was very cooperative most of the time when they were having sex. That wasn't her. Yeah, Shinjilia replied. Tell me what you're feeling. Otherwise, you'll be in grave danger. Is it very dangerous? Shen Manting raised her eyes. Despite her exhaustion, there was a sharpness in her eyes. Will I die? Chapter 21:43. Shen Jilia's words made Shen Manting feel a little stunned. For a moment, she couldn't understand what he meant. After a while she said, brain death. She couldn't think of any other explanation. But as soon as this thought came to her mind, Shen Manting felt flustered. If she was brain dead, it would be better to die directly. She was no longer in a vegetative state. Her body was still breathing, but there was no soul in it. When Shen Jilia heard this, he shook his head gently. It's worse than brain death. There are now 2 personalities in your body. Do you know that? Shen Manting was suddenly shocked, and her heart beat faster and heavier. She subconsciously turned to look at Shen Luo and Shen Manting, trying to find a hint of rebuttal or a joke on their faces. But there was none. Not at all. Yi Qianqian seemed a little sad, while Shen Luo pursed his lips and remained silent. Are you saying that I have a split personality? Shen Manting looked at Shen Jilia and immediately thought of the strange things that had happened in the past 2 days. Sometimes, she was clearly aware that she was sleeping, but her body would send clear senses, as if she was moving at night. But she thought she was dreaming. Shen Manting only felt that it was ridiculous, and she laughed, but the uneasiness in her heart grew stronger. Looking at their very serious expressions, she asked, Did I faint just now? After being pulled by that huge force, she lost consciousness. It was exactly the same as just now. But at that time, she didn't struggle and directly fainted. She thought it was because she was in poor health. She didn't want to resist, so she let it go. Seeing Shen Jilia nod, Shen Manting felt even more ridiculous. She laughed and said, Then I had a dream. In the dream, I ran out with Little Moon. It was very cold outside, and Nanny he chased after me. Then, Shen Luo carried me home. I was very happy. As she spoke, Shen Manting noticed that Yi Qianqian and Shen Luo's expressions were a little strange. The 2 of them looked at each other, and Yi Qianqian nodded at her and said, These things really happened. You weren't dreaming. An unprecedented fear engulfed Shen Manting. So, she had always been in an unhealthy mental state? Dual personality refers to a person's mental state being greatly stimulated. When this mental state is unable to bear it, under the great pressure, it will form another personality that is opposed to the original personality. Shen Jilia enunciated each word clearly. Logically speaking, you've always existed. You should be the primary personality. Shen Manting was surrounded by fear of the unknown, and her heart was filled with unease. She instinctively held onto his hand. This did not alleviate her fear, but it was better than nothing. However, it's obvious that you haven't been awake for long, or perhaps you don't even know about the existence of another personality. Your position is very dangerous. Her consciousness is stronger than yours, and she wants to be the dominant one. She's slowly invading and occupying you. In other words, Little Manting was killing Big Manting bit by bit. Unlike the naivety she displayed, she selfishly obeyed her instincts. Everyone wanted to live. Even an accidental personality was no exception. Chapter 21:44. But such a dream was too real for her now. Just as she was dreaming, with every touch and every word, she could completely feel their appearances. It was true. What they said was true. What should I do? Shen Manting's voice was choked with fear. Am I really going to die? In the face of death, anyone would be instinctively afraid. Moreover, Shen Manting's situation seemed to be worse than death. Shen Jilia looked at her and said, There's a way, as long as you cooperate. What way? Shen Manting looked at him. Do I have to take medicine? Will medicine work in this state? Calm down. Don't be nervous. Shen Jilia looked at her. It'll be fine. It was impossible for Shen Manting not to be nervous. At this moment, she only felt fear and confusion. She's only 12 years old. Shen Jilia's voice seemed to be full of magic. The reason why she can threaten your position is because she took the initiative. She sensed the existence of the opposing personality before you, so it's normal for you to be passive. Shen Manting immediately sat up as if she had grasped a life-saving straw. What do you mean? From now on, you already know of her existence. Based on your nearly 30 years of experience, is your mental strength weaker than a 12-year-old girl? No, obviously not. Shen Manting's heart calmed down at this moment, and she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. But soon, Shen Manting smiled bitterly. She's me, the 12-year-old me, right? Yes. Then her state of mind won't be weak. Shen Manting looked up. When I was young, I was even stronger than when I grew up. But you've grown up, Shen Jilia's words were meaningful. But she hasn't. Shen Manting was stunned. She vaguely seemed to understand what he meant. Shen Manting persisted for a long time. Finally, she couldn't bear the sleepiness and fell asleep. Shen Luo and lay quietly beside her and gently held her in his arms, silently accompanying her. Drowsiness hit him, and Shen Luoan closed his eyes. Just as he was falling asleep, the person beside him suddenly moved. Shen Luoan immediately opened his eyes. Shen Manting flipped over and naturally lifted her legs to support his body. She buried her head in his arms. Shen Luoan's heart softened slightly at her intimate behavior. However, at the same time he was also clear. Only young Manting would do that. After keeping his eyes open for a while, he couldn't stand it anymore and fell into a deep sleep. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, the person in his arms gently trembled. Shen Luoan subconsciously hugged her tightly, then opened his eyes. Suddenly, his eyes met with a pair of pitch-black and bright eyes. Shen Luoan was startled by the sudden appearance of such a pair of eyes in the dim light around him. The person in front of him was obviously shocked by him. She said with some grievance, "Hubby!" Her weak voice carried the tenderness of a young girl. Shen Luoan heaved a sigh of relief. When he came back to his senses, he was already drenched in cold sweat. "When did you wake up?" asked Shen Luoan. His voice was a little hoarse, as if he had just woken up. Shen Manting wrapped her arms around his waist and said, "I just woke up. Did I scare you?" "A little." At the same time, Shen Luoan felt a little upset in his heart. How could she still look so naive? Caven woke up even later. He looked up a bunch of information. Sleep early, everyone. Chapter 21:45. How could she still look so naive? She looked just like little Manting a few days ago. He couldn't help but love her. Little Manting pouted and leaned over. She pecked Shen Luoan's lips and said, "Honey, don't you like me anymore?" Shen Luoan's heart trembled. Little Manting was still young, but she was very sensitive to the distance between people. Shen Luoan tried to relax and said softly, "Why not?" Shen Manting smiled happily. She pouted and said, "Kiss me then." "Little dirty girl. You haven't even brushed your teeth." Shen Luoan tapped her nose and then pecked her. "It's still dark. Sleep a little longer." "Well, I won't sleep," Shen Manting said coquettishly and twisted in Shen Luoan's arms. "I want to be with you. It's me, not anyone else." While speaking, Shen Manting hugged Shen Luoan's arm and rubbed her thighs against it. She whispered, "Honey, I miss you so much." Shen Luoan's suppressed desire for a few days was instantly ignited by her gentle teasing. Using his large hands to block her thighs, he pressed his body against hers and pressed her firmly against him. Shen Manting was looking forward to it. Her eyes were shining. She raised her head and kissed him. Her lips fell on his face and made a bo-bo sound. Shen Luoan tilted his head slightly and asked in a low voice, "Aren't your relatives still around?" Shen Manting pouted and said, "But I miss you so much." Her look made Shen Luoan's body even more hot. He turned over and lay down again. He pressed her thighs to prevent her from moving and whispered, "Sleep well. If you provoke me again, I'll hit you. You're shameless to hit a woman. Bah! Shen Manting said in a low voice. Shen Luo, and didn't stand on ceremony. He slapped her butt and said, "Go to sleep." Shen Manting didn't listen to him. She hugged him and touched his body naughtily. Shen Luoan was touched by her. He simply grabbed her hand and pressed it under his body. "If you don't sleep, I'll kick you out." Shen Manting didn't show any signs of repentance. She smiled and said, "Sleep. How can I sleep with you like this?" But when you did it, I was also sleeping. Although she didn't sleep very well, she would still close her eyes when she was extremely sleepy. Shen Luoan. He grabbed her hand and restrained her with his thigh. Their bodies were firmly pressed against each other, and Shen Manting couldn't make any more trouble. Shen Manting's eyes gradually darkened as she lay on his chest. Greedily feeling the breath of the man in front of her, little Manting's heart was moved. How blissful! How could such happiness be snatched away by another person? Moreover, this person did not like her husband at all. She had no right to deprive her of everything, even if she was the grown-up version of herself. Shen Luo and didn't open his eyes, but he knew that she was awake. Fortunately, she didn't make any strange movements. The night passed peacefully. When Shen Luo woke up, it was already bright outside. The woman in his arms still maintained that position, breathing evenly. Shen Luo gently loosened his grip. As he moved, Shen Manting also opened her eyes at the same time. When she saw Shen Luo's face, she seemed a little startled. Then she calmed down and said, "Morning." Shen Luo smiled bitterly when he saw her attitude. He could actually recognize who was who between them. Chapter 2146. After maintaining the same posture for a long time, Shen Manting's body felt a little stiff. He stretched out his hand with some difficulty and moved it a little. Just as he twisted his neck, a large hand was placed on his shoulder. His warm palm pressed on her shoulder, neither too lightly nor too heavily. Shen Manting was flattered, and her heartbeat quickened. Shen Manting was a little embarrassed, so she shrugged her shoulders and said softly, "There's no need." Shen Luoan didn't let go and asked, "Is it sour here?" "I'm getting up." "Or here." Shen Luo pressed his palm against her waist again. Shen Manting was on her period, so she wasn't feeling well. Being pressed like this, she felt so comfortable that her eyes narrowed. So, she just let him be and closed her eyes to enjoy it. Shen Luo continued massaging and pinching her arm with the same amount of force. Shen Manting flinched and whispered, "It's ticklish." Her soft voice was like a feather brushing past his heart. Shen Luo's heart softened. Not only did he not stop, but he pinched her twice more mischievously. Shen Manting couldn't help laughing and said, "Stop fooling around. Get up." Perhaps, even Shen Manting herself didn't realize how charming she was at that moment. Shen Luo's heart fluttered. He pulled her into his arms and asked softly, "Do you feel uncomfortable?" "No." Shen Manting squirmed. "Let go of me. I'm going to the bathroom." Shen Luo finally released her. She immediately got up and ran to the bathroom barefoot. Shen Manting closed the door. She could clearly sense that she was acting strangely. She seemed to be different from before. Shen Luo hadn't done anything overboard, but her heart was pounding. It must be because of young Manting. She knew that little Manting liked Shen Luo very much, but she didn't expect her to like him to this extent. She was actually affected as well. Caught off guard, it permeated naturally. After washing up, Shen Manting changed her sanitary pad. Only then did she realize that her period was almost over. For a moment, she was in a trance. It felt like a long time had passed since he woke up. There were so many things to struggle with in his mind that even time seemed to slow down. When they came out, Shen Luo walked in with his son. Shen Yuexiao was petite. His chubby little face and big, dark eyes were exactly the same as hers. When he saw her, his little face immediately bloomed into a smile and he shouted, "Mama!" Shen Yuexiao shook off his father's hand and threw himself into Shen Manting's arms. Shen Manting picked him up with a smile and asked, "What's wrong?" "Mommy, ride the wooden horse." The little guy simply expressed what he wanted, and his eyes were full of beautiful brilliance. "Daddy will go too." Shen Manting's lips curled into a smile and she couldn't help but kiss the little boy on the cheek. But soon she looked at Shen Luoan and asked, "Can I?" She knew her situation. She couldn't completely control her consciousness and body. If she took the baby out, it would be dangerous. However, she had already stood the baby up once yesterday. If she did it again today, it wouldn't be good for the child's education. It is said that one can judge one's age at 3. For a child, the best time to shape his personality was before the age of 3. Chapter 21:47. Little Moon was still young, but he understood what his father meant. She pouted her lips and said unhappily, "All right." Shen Luo, and felt a little sorry for him. He rubbed his little head and said, "Daddy will buy you some marshmallows later." The little boy's eyes immediately lit up and he said, "Okay." Shen Luo, and had been exhausted recently. He felt that it had been a long time since he took the child out to play. Shen Manting was wearing a skirt and a coat. She held her son's hand and stood in front of the marshmallow stall with Shen Luoan, watching the marshmallows being made with her son. The little boy was particularly engrossed. When the red and green marshmallows were ready, he immediately jumped up and shouted, "Hooray!" Shen Manting took it and handed it to him. Little Moon held it in his hand with satisfaction, his little face smiling. Shen Luo and handed Shen Manting a small bamboo stick. She quickly understood and used the small bamboo stick to dig out the marshmallows and fed them to the little boy. However, Little Moon was greedy and couldn't help but stick out his tongue to lick the marshmallows. Soon, his little face was covered with sticky marshmallows. "It's dirty. Slow down." Shen Manting bent down and looked at him helplessly. However, her temperament was completely different from when Shen Manting was in charge. At this moment, the atmosphere was so strong that even Shen Luo and could clearly feel her love for the child. After all, little Manting was still a child. Perhaps she knew that this was her son, but in her consciousness after all, it didn't come from her body, so the feeling was not as strong as it was for Shen Manting. Shen Manting fed the little boy candy carefully and patiently. It was such a simple and boring process, but Shen Luo was fascinated by it. It wasn't until the candy was almost finished that Shen Manting realized something was wrong. She looked up and saw Shen Manting looking at her with tenderness in her eyes. Her heart skipped a beat and she immediately straightened up and asked, "What's wrong?" Shen Luo shook his head gently and said, "Let's go to the park with the baby." The park was not far from home. There was a hand-turned wooden horse inside, and many children were willing to play there. Shen Luo picked up the little boy and said, "Daddy will take you to ride the wooden horse." Shen Yuexiao's big eyes lit up. "Thank you, Daddy." "Wipe it first. It's sticky." Shen Luo reached out to Shen Manting. Shen Manting immediately reacted and took out a pack of wet tissues. It was a completely subconscious action. Shen Manting pulled out a wet tissue and handed it to him before she realized that something was wrong. It was too natural. It was as if he had experienced this countless times, and it had become a habit. It was little Manting. Shen Manting felt a little upset. It was as if something that belonged to him had been violated. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. After wiping the little girl's face, he turned around and noticed that something was wrong with her. "What's wrong?" he asked. Shen Manting shook her head. "Let's go." When they arrived at the park, there were already many children running around. Boys and girls played together in groups of 3 to 5. Parents brought their children to play in the park. There were old people and young couples. Shen Yuexiao was in high spirits and struggled to get out of his father's arms. He ran excitedly to the merry-go-round and turned to call out to Shen Luoan, "Dad!" Shen Luoan carried him up and said, "Hold on tight. The merry-go-round is about to move." He then looked at Shen Manting and said, "Mommy, let's play together." Chapter 21:48. Shen Manting's lips curled into a smile at her precious son's sincere invitation. But she quickly rubbed the little boy's head and said, "Mommy is an adult. You can't play here. This is for children." "But Mommy used to play here." "That's different. There are adults in the amusement park, but there are only children here." "Oh." Shen Yuexiao didn't quite understand, but he was soon pushed around by Shen Luo. Giggles could be heard endlessly, and there were also the sounds of other children giggling around. Shan Manting looked at her son in front of her and couldn't help smiling. But the sounds around her seemed to be getting farther and farther away. Everything in front of her was white. She was in a daze. She turned her head and reached out to grab Shen Luoan. Shen Luoan looked at her sideways and asked, "What's wrong?" Shan Manting's vision was getting whiter and whiter, and her consciousness seemed to be dragged by someone. She opened her mouth but couldn't speak. Then her vision darkened, and her whole body softly fell into his arms. Shan Manting didn't know what was wrong with her. She was surrounded by dazzling whiteness. After walking for an unknown amount of time in a daze, he finally saw a small figure. She was thin and sallow. She was 12 years old, but she looked like she was only 10 years old. She was wearing the leftover clothes of the other brothers and sisters in the orphanage. They were washed white and looked a little dirty. Yunsuan sat in the corner and stared blankly at the little thing that she didn't know what it was. She seemed to notice her arrival and raised her head to look at her. Shan Manting saw herself when she was 12 years old, and her feelings were indescribably complicated. Yunsuan walked over slowly and smiled at her. "You're here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Shan Manting looked at him, and the surroundings were distorted again. She knew that she was dreaming. This kind of dream was different from the days when the body was dominated by another personality. It was completely random and unorganized. But at the same time, she also knew that this was another personality trying to communicate with her and meet her. So she saw Yunsuan. The surrounding environment changed again and again, and she seemed to return to a very young age in the orphanage, secretly drawing on the wall with her good friend Zhang Meifeng. When the dean found out, he stomped his feet and flew into a rage. He looked for a stick everywhere and tried to beat someone up. The two little girls ran away in fear and amusement. Their eyes were filled with laughter after the prank. After an unknown amount of time, she was suddenly pressed against the washstand and ravaged. Shen Luoan's face was filled with lust. She felt a dull pain in her heart, and she retreated. The scene changed again. She was pinned under the man's body, and the room was completely dark. She could hear the man's low panting and sighing beside her ear. His voice was almost sorrowful as he repeated, "Manting, I love you. Manting, don't hate me." His body was in pain, and his heart was twitching. Suddenly, the voice in her ears disappeared, and a huge force pushed her down. In front of her was Yunsuan's young face, almost twisted with hatred and madness. She said, "Go to hell. You thief. Die. Die. Die." Shen Manting felt as if she was standing on the edge of a cliff. She was suddenly pushed down, and her whole body trembled. When he opened his eyes, everything was dark. His body was already drenched in sweat. Chapter 2149. Shan Manting was in a trance. She listened to the sound in her ears and stared at the darkness above her head. After a long time, she suddenly came to her senses. She turned her head and saw that Shen Luoan was looking at her with tears in his eyes. His large palm brushed across her face, and she felt a cool sensation on her face. Shan Manting realized that she had already burst into tears. Shen Luoan hugged her and whispered, "You slept for a long time, and it's already early in the morning." Miraculously, Shen Manting's heart was calm at this moment. She gently placed her palm on his arm and asked, "Did little Manting wake up?" As she spoke, Shen Manting suddenly realized that her throat was terribly hoarse. It was dry and painful, like the price of screaming hysterically. Shen Luoan didn't know what to say, so he whispered, "I'll get you a glass of hot water." "Yes," Shen Manting replied and watched as he got up and got out of bed. She propped herself up and sat up, feeling a little urgent. She got up and found that her whole body was sore and weak. She wanted to get out of bed, but she barely had enough strength. Shen Manting found her slippers. Her footsteps were light, and she moved very slowly. She was on the verge of collapsing, as if she could directly lie down in the next second. When Shen Luoan came in with the water, he saw Shen Manting standing and was shocked. He quickly came forward to support her. Shen Manting leaned softly in his arms and took the water from his hand. After drinking a lot of it, she felt a little better. Looking at his red eyes, she couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong with me?" Shen Luoan shook his head and put the cup aside. "Do you want to go to the toilet?" "Yes," Shen Manting felt a little embarrassed. Help me there. I'll do it myself. Shen Luoan did as he was told. After hearing the sound of water being flushed, he turned around to help her. I don't have any strength, Shen Manting said in a low voice. How did this happen? There are some side effects from the injection just now. Shen Luoan directly carried her in his arms. Sleep a little longer. Shen Manting didn't object. She squinted her eyes and still felt a little sleepy. However, after experiencing the dream, she didn't dare to sleep again. Looking at Shen Luoan, who was obviously not right, Shen Manting asked again, What's wrong with me? Shen Luoan was silent for a moment before he said, Little Manting came out this afternoon. Shen Manting seemed to have expected it. She wanted to commit suicide. Shen Luoan closed his eyes, looking extremely exhausted. Shen Manting's heart skipped a beat. She immediately thought of the hoarse and resentful words she heard in her dream. Go to hell. She wanted to commit suicide, but it was her body that died. Because he couldn't get it, he decided to destroy it? Shen Manting still had a lingering fear in her heart. She held Shen Luoan's hand and asked, And then? It didn't work. I asked Jilia to give you an injection, Shen Luoan said as he caressed her face. You'll get better. There's already a way to control little Manting's mental strength. You'll get better slowly. However, they could no longer stay at home. What happened today had scared the elderly and the children. Shen Luoan kissed her gently on the cheek and said softly, We may need to move. Where to? I have a house in Nanshan district. It's in the suburbs and close to Jilia's hospital. Let's go there, shall we? Is that all right? He asked softly, but she didn't know which word he said stung her eyes. Shen Manting's tears rolled down in an instant, but she quickly forced them back. Chapter 2150. It took less than 3 days to move to the new house. The house wasn't big, but it was quiet. There were 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms, and the decoration was cool, revealing a man's taste and toughness. Shen Manting walked in and straightened out her clothes in the master bedroom's cloakroom. She and Shen Luoan's clothes. Yi Qianqian and Shen Jilia also moved in together, so that Yi Qianqian could accompany her and keep an eye on Shen Manting's condition. Shen Jilia had always been taking care of Shen Manting's condition, so he had no intention of changing doctors. He only occasionally asked Luo Ran to take a look. Shen Manting tidied up her clothes and was making the bed in the room when she heard the door open. Shen Luoan was back. Inexplicably, Shen Manting felt a sense of satisfaction. It was like a normal wife waiting for her husband to come home. It was wonderful and happy. Hearing the sound of plastic bags outside, Shen Manting made the bed and walked out. Shen Luoan was washing rice and cooking. When he saw her come out, he asked, Are you done? Not yet. Shen Manting walked over and glanced at the vegetables he had bought. There are still some things that haven't been cleaned up, but they can be done later. Shen Manting took out the fresh ingredients and put them directly on the edge of the sink. She slowly began to tidy them up. Shen Luoan saw the smile on her lips and felt a little strange. He asked tentatively, Are you happy today? Shen Manting quickly suppressed the corners of her mouth and said, It's all right. Shen Luoan didn't say anything. He poured the rice into the new pot and asked, Is it because you moved to a new house? Shen Manting couldn't help but smile and said, Well, that's one of the reasons. He stopped asking and helped her to tidy up the ingredients. Shen Manting's mood was better than it had been in the past few days. She smiled unconsciously and asked casually, When will Jilia and Qianqian move in? Tomorrow. I have to go to the laboratory tomorrow. Lao Wu can't handle it anymore, Shen Luoan said in a soft voice. I have a lot of things to do, and they are waiting for me to take over. Well, will Qianqian come tomorrow? I'll leave when she comes. Okay. Shen Manting looked sideways and whispered, When will you come back? Shen Luoan was obviously very surprised. After staring blankly for a while, he curled his lips and said, I'll come back once I'm done. Shen Manting turned her head away, and her cheeks were a little red. She seemed unhappy and said, It's as good as not saying anything. It won't take long. It shouldn't be a big deal. One afternoon should be enough. Shen Luoan inched closer to her and called out, Manting. Shen Manting was washing vegetables. She lowered her head and responded. Look up. Shen Manting subconsciously raised her head when she heard his words. The corners of Shen Luo'an's lips curled up. He quickly lowered his head and kissed the corner of her lips gently. Shen Manting's smile widened, but she didn't say anything. After washing the vegetables, she went to prepare the other ingredients. Shen Luo'an felt at ease. When she finished processing the ingredients in her hands, he chased her inside. She was the backbone of the kitchen. With Nanny He at home, Shen Luo'an was in charge of the family's food. He was used to not having to worry about food and clothing since he was a child, so he rarely had the opportunity to enter the kitchen. His culinary skills were all learned from watching Shen Jiliya cook for Yi Qianqian. The taste wasn't as good as Shen Jiliya's, but it wasn't too bad and was still acceptable. After finishing the last dish, he served it on the dining table. Chapter 2151. Shen Luo'an's heart was in his throat. His body reacted faster than his brain. He immediately rushed to the door of the room and saw Shen Manting looking at the cabinet on the floor helplessly. The bedside table, which had been placed properly, suddenly fell to the ground. Everything on it fell to the ground. Fortunately, there was no glass or anything that was broken. Shen Luo'an stepped forward to support Shen Manting. What happened? Shen Manting was a little confused and said, I think little Manting came out just now. Shen Luo'an gently pulled her into his arms and whispered, and then? Then she toppled the cabinet. I didn't want her to do it, so I came back on my own. Shen Manting hugged him. It was so scary. Don't be afraid. We're fine now, aren't we? Shen Luo'an comforted her softly. Wash your hands first and eat. We'll come back later. Okay, Shen Manting replied quickly. For some reason, Shen Luo'an felt a little strange. He couldn't tell what was strange about it, but there seemed to be something wrong somewhere. He held Shen Manting's hand as they walked out and washed their hands together. Then, he scooped a bowl of rice for both of them. Shen Manting took it and ate slowly with the chopsticks. He seemed to be especially fond of that plate of crispy fried ribs. Shen Luo'an glanced at it and asked, How is it? It's delicious, Shen Manting replied. She glanced at him and said, But Nanny He's cooking is still the best. Shen Luo'an's heart sank when he heard this. Without batting an eyelid, he nodded and said, Then I will improve next time. Shen Manting didn't say another word. The rest of the journey was very quiet. Shen Luo'an was preoccupied with his own thoughts. After dinner, he glanced at Shen Manting and said, I won't be able to see my son for some time. I've arranged for him to go to kindergarten in September. I'm not sure if he'll be able to get used to it. Of course he can, Shen Manting said with certainty. Little Moon is the smartest child I've ever met. By September, he'll probably be better than all the other children. Yes, Shen Luo'an replied, but his mood was low. He casually said, I think so too. A smile appeared on Shen Manting's face. After she finished eating, she cleared the dishes and went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Shen Luo'an's heart sank as he watched her busy figure in the kitchen. He sent Shen Jiliya a WeChat message. Jiliya. Jiliya? Shen Luo'an. Little Manting is out. Shen Jiliya was still packing up when he saw those words. His heart skipped a beat and he immediately asked, What's the situation now? Shen Luo'an. She's pretending to be the adult Manting. Jiliya. Shen Jiliya was a little confused. What does it mean to pretend to be an adult? After a long pause, he said, Do you have violent tendencies? Shen Luo'an. Not yet. Jiliya. Hang in there. Qianqian and I will be there tomorrow. When he put his phone away, Shen Manting had already come out of the kitchen. What are you busy with? Shen Manting asked casually, as if she didn't care about it. He put down his phone and walked over to her. He hugged her gently and said, I'm looking up information. What information? How to decorate a happy nest. Shen Manting blushed slightly and hugged him. Okay, let's investigate it together. Let's go and clean up the room. Shen Luo'an gently kissed her forehead. Little Manting is too naughty. What's so fun about the bedside table? Chapter 2152. Probably, Shen Luoan said with a sigh. You're right. I'm sorry. Shen Manting didn't expect him to say that. She was lost in thought for a moment and then said, There's nothing to be sorry about. She appeared later. First come, first served, don't you think so? Her eyes were slightly warm as she said that. She let go of him and walked into the room with her back to him. Shen Luoan looked at her back and didn't see anything strange about her. However, one could also feel the desolation of being abandoned. Shen Luoan followed her and said softly, There's no such thing. Big Manting is Manting. And Little Manting is Manting. In my opinion, they're the same. Shen Manting had her back to him and he couldn't tell what she was feeling. She picked up the things scattered on the floor and didn't make a sound. Shen Luoan went forward and lifted the bedside table that had fallen down. He said slowly, They're both Manting and the women I love. I'm the least qualified person to favor one and discriminate against the other. Shen Manting couldn't help but look up at him. Her eyes were even more warm. Shen Luoan turned his back to her and said, Manting, I love you and her. I don't want you to kill each other. I want you to be well. However, that was impossible. Only one of them could exist. It had to be the big one or the little one. Shen Manting stood up with the things in her arms and said, You know it's impossible. It's possible, Shen Luoan said softly. You're the same person. Why can't you live together? Shen Luoan turned around and said softly, Manting, you're kind. Little Manting was very simple and naive when she was a child. Although her mood has been a little unstable recently, it's only because her existence is threatened. This is human nature. Shen Manting listened to his words and silently put the things back on the bedside table. Shen Luoan gently hugged her from behind and whispered, But she may not know how important you are to me. Shen Manting's body stiffened slightly. You were with me when I was most depressed, Shen Luoan said softly. And after you slept in the hospital for 2 years, it was Little Manting who was by my side and accompanied me through the lowest point. No one can replace her. Shen Manting didn't say anything, but her eyes were filled with tears. She reached out and put her hand on his hand, which was holding her, and said in a choked voice, What if you have to choose one of the two? Shen Luoan leaned against her neck and pretended not to notice her strange behavior. He seemed to be thinking about it and said, Why do we have to choose? If we choose, the outcome will be a lose-lose situation. But this is a lose-lose situation. Everyone wants to survive. Shen Luoan. Shen Manting called out his name, but in her heart, she had an even greater desire to call him hubby. She hugged his hand and turned her head away. She wanted to kiss him. However, it seemed that Elder Manting would not do so. Although she was gentle now, she still resisted her husband's touch. She stared at him for a long time, but in the end, she did not raise her head. Unexpectedly, Shen Luoan reached out and held her chin. He lowered his head and kissed her lips softly. Shen Manting couldn't hold it in any longer, and tears rolled down her cheeks. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him while sobbing. Chapter 2153. It was as if he hadn't touched her for a long time. Pressing her under his body, Shen Luoan's desire poured out from the depths of his body. Shen Manting hugged him. Her hands eagerly fumbled for the corner of his clothes and lifted his clothes. The two of them were entangled and rolled around each other instinctively. The moment Shen Luoan entered, Shen Manting hugged him contentedly and couldn't help but cry out, Honey, I love you. I love you too, Shen Luoan gently kissed the corner of her lips. No matter who you are, I love you. I only love you. Shen Manting suddenly realized that she seemed to have been exposed. She looked down at Shen Luoan, and it was obvious that he already knew. An indescribable emotion suddenly filled her body. But before she could open her mouth to say anything, her body was like a wave, floating up and down with him. Tears flowed from the corner of her eyes, and Shen Manting climbed onto his waist. The world seemed to have gone far away, and there was only one sentence left in her mind. I love you, I only love you. In the middle of the night, Shen Manting woke up with an extremely unbearable feeling. The man who appeared in her countless nightmares, once again pressed her under his body. Shen Manting couldn't tell what she was feeling, but she followed his movements and let go of herself, moaning happily. Shen Luo kissed her softly and whispered, "Is it you?" At the same time, she sank heavily, and Shen Manting groaned, as if the softest place in the depths of her heart was suddenly hit by him. She grabbed his shoulders with both hands and said intermittently, "It's me." Shen Luo slightly stiffened, but Manting under him not only didn't resist, but also gave a more skillful response than little Manting. The night was lingering. When it was over, the sky was already bright. Shen Manting was so tired that she fell into a deep sleep, but Shen Luo still held her and looked at her. After a long time, he suddenly smiled, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. The next day, he was woken up by the doorbell. He looked at the time, and it was 10:18 in the morning. Shen Luo was so sleepy that he didn't even take a shower last night. Now that he got out of bed, Shen Luo felt dizzy walking. Firstly, he didn't have enough sleep. Secondly, he was almost squeezed dry. He casually put on some casual clothes and got up to open the door. When Shen Jielia saw the expression on Shen Luo's face, he immediately tugged at his wife and said, "Brother, hurry up and go inside. You're affecting the city's appearance." Shen Luo Yi Qianqian was a little dazed. Before she could recover her wits, Shen Luo had already walked inside. Shen Jielia and Yi Qianqian moved on their own. Actually, they didn't have many things. They just needed to put their clothes and toiletries in the bag, and everything else would be taken care of. The couple glanced at the closed door of the master bedroom and kindly decided not to disturb it. After diligently buying groceries, they even rang the doorbell once. It was Shen Luo again. He still had the sleepy expression on his face. Shen Jielia and Yi Qianqian clicked their tongues. Yi Qianqian whispered, "Big brother was really intense last night." Shen Jielia replied, "I can tell." Tiske. As Yi Qianqian washed the vegetables, she muttered, "I'm so jealous." Shen Jielia asked, "What do you mean by that?" Yi Qianqian snorted. "That's exactly what I meant." Chapter 2154. Tisk, Yi Qianqian said in disdain. Paper tiger. Ever since the miscarriage, he didn't dare to do anything to her. Especially since she had been taking Chinese medicine recently, the old Chinese doctor had repeatedly reminded her that she must be careful during sex. Careful during sex. Careful during sex. Careful during sex, and must not get pregnant during this period of time. As a result, Yi Qianqian was forced to abstain from sex. In the past, Shen Jilia's needs in that regard. Apart from when she could rest during her period, she would always beg him to let her go. Later on, she became the one who took the initiative. Not only did Shen Jilia restrain himself, but he was also extremely gentle. Once or twice a week. After that, she went to take a shower. The gap is a little big. Shen Jilia's heart was ablaze with anger. He placed his hands on either side of her body and gritted his teeth as he said, "Wasn't I taking care of your body?" Yi Qianqian pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Unexpectedly, Shen Jilia picked her up by her legs and hung her up with his thighs against the wall. He lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. His wet palms rubbed against her body as if he was ravaging her in revenge. Yi Qianqian felt a little pain from the rubbing. She reached out and pushed him away. "Ouch! It hurts." His voice was muffled, but in this small space, the ambiguous atmosphere overflowed. Ding-ding, the sound of a key. It was obvious that someone had done it on purpose. Shen Jilia froze and turned to look. Yi Qianqian immediately returned to her senses and pushed him away. When she saw Shen Luo standing at the door, she blushed. He quickly turned around and continued to wash the vegetables, pretending that nothing had happened. Shen Luo threw the key on the table and said, "Don't press the doorbell anymore. Open the door yourself next time." Also, Shen Luo glanced at him, "Remember to return to your room next time. You're affecting the city's appearance." What a joke. He was the owner of the house. He hadn't tried cooking in the kitchen yet. Yi Qianqian's back was facing them as she washed the vegetables. When she heard this, her face turned even redder. After Shen Luo left, she kicked Shen Jilia. "It's all your fault. Don't provoke me." Shen Jilia bent over and pressed his forehead against hers. He warned her softly, "Otherwise, I'll show you why the sun is so red." "Why?" F***CK. By the time she finished cooking, Shen Luoan and Shen Manting had already washed up and came out of the bathroom. It was exactly 12:30. Shen Manting was wearing a thin white sweater with a high collar and a smile on her face. It was the kind of mature and intelligent smile, indescribably charming and amorous. Without a doubt, she was the adult Manting. One look and you can tell that it's Jilia's cooking. Shen Manting took the rice from Yi Qianqian and smiled. We should be the ones cooking. Let me make dinner. Who's being polite? Shen Jilia glanced at her. You're acting like you don't know me. You can continue eating. Remember to wash the dishes when you're done. Don't listen to him. Yi Qianqian took a bite of meat and mumbled, I'll do it later. You can't do it. Shen Jilia glanced at her with resentment in his eyes. I have something to do later. Yi Qianqian was speechless. Yi Qianqian's face reddened all the way to her ears. She raised her leg and kicked him under the table. However, he didn't manage to kick her and was sandwiched in the middle. Yi Qianqian tried to pull away but failed. She glared at him resentfully. Shen Manting looked at them and asked, Did you quarrel? Shen Luoan's heart was as clear as a mirror. He picked some food for Shen Manting and said, Don't mind them. Spring is here. Yi Qianqian immediately lowered her head. Chapter 21:55. After dinner, Yi Qianqian took her cell phone and was about to run away. She didn't expect that she would be pulled back before she could walk out of the door. Bang! The door was slammed shut. Yi Qianqian was filled with regret. Sob, I was wrong, okay? Shen Manting only came back to her senses when she saw Yi Qianqian being pulled back into the room by Shen Jilia. Feeling a little embarrassed, she lowered her head and continued to clean the dishes. At the same time, she felt a little envious. Yi Qianqian was really happy to be married to Shen Jilia. Although he was not very serious at times, he had a way of dealing with people and had always been very popular. Unlike Shen Luoan, who was a taciturn person, perhaps geniuses were always more taciturn. Shen Manting subconsciously glanced at Shen Luoan, who was also cleaning up, with a smile in her eyes. What are you looking at? Shen Luoan squinted and asked softly, Haven't you seen enough? What are you talking about? Shen Manting looked disgusted, but she couldn't hide the smile on her lips. I'm going to wash the dishes. Cut some fruit and leave it there. Jilia bought some fruit and put it in the fridge. Okay. While the couple on the outside was working together, the couple on the inside was already in perfect harmony. Shen Jilia was very impatient. Before he even finished taking off his clothes, he pressed her down on the bed and kissed her. Yi Qianqian was scared and excited. After a symbolic struggle, she began to move her hands and feet. Shen Jilia moved his mouth away from her lips and heard Yi Qianqian panting and saying dirty things. She said, Honey, take off your pants. Old Shen, why the hell aren't you coming in yet? Are you dying? F***CK. Can't you F***King let me prepare myself? Ah. Gently. Gently. Shen Jilia had no intention of letting her go. He moved fiercely and gritted his teeth. I haven't beaten you for a few days. Are you itching? Yi Qianqian didn't deny it. She hugged him tighter and shouted, Slowly. Ah. After they were done, Yi Qianqian got up and grabbed Shen Jilia's hand. She said anxiously, Did you not take any safety precautions just now? Shen Jilia said, I forgot. Then what should we do? Yi Qianqian was a little flustered. She shook his arm. The doctor said that we can't get pregnant for the time being. Shen Jilia pulled her over and pinned her down with his upper body. He gently licked and kissed her as he whispered, What are you afraid of? We've only been struck once in 2 years. This is the only time we didn't wear it. I reckon we'll be fine. When she heard that, Yi Qianqian actually felt that it made sense. As she accepted his kiss, her breathing gradually became heavier. She said, What if it's true? If I'm pregnant, I'll give birth. I can't wait to get pregnant. Shen Jilia leaned over her again. Old Chinese medicine doctor only said that it's possible. That means it's an extremely low probability. Besides, your period should be coming soon. Yi Qianqian replied, You really know it better than I do. Of course, Xueqi said proudly. I'm your husband. Again. I think I should wear one. I didn't buy it. I still have what I bought last time. I didn't bring it. Ugh. When they were done, Yi Qianqian leaned against the headboard and began to doubt her life. She nudged her husband and asked, Do you have a cigarette? Xueqi asked, Why do you want a cigarette? Hey, didn't they say that a cigarette makes you as happy as a deity after sex? I'm trying to see if this thing can numb you a little. That way, I'll be mentally prepared the next time you go crazy. Xueqi replied, Would I go crazy if you didn't provoke me? Chapter 2156. Xueqi replied, Would I have gone mad if you hadn't provoked me? Humph. Yi Qianqian was indignant. Would I have provoked you if you hadn't gone overboard? How is that too much? Xueqi raised his eyebrows. His large hands moved closer and began to grope her. Tell me about it. Yi Qianqian dodged, but she still couldn't escape his claws. She asked, Again? I've been saving up the public grain for a long time. Xueqi bowed. It's better to hand it over all at once. Yi Qianqian exclaimed, Wake up, young man. This is your brother's house. Xueqi chuckled and pinched her cheek. Get up and go take a shower. Yes. Shen Manting was in a surprisingly good state today. Shen Luo and had already gone to the laboratory. She was sitting alone in the living room, cutting paper. She suddenly heard the sound of the door opening. She looked up and saw Xueqi walking out. He was in high spirits, and his face was beaming with happiness. When Shen Manting saw his expression, she couldn't help but smile and ask, Why are you so happy? Aha! Xueqi sat down and looked at the paper in front of her. Why are you playing with this again? I had nothing better to do, so I came to cause trouble. Shen Manting glanced behind her. Where's Qianqian? He's inside. He doesn't want to come out, Xueqi replied vaguely. How's the situation recently? Shen Manting's smile faded. She lowered her eyes to look at the pattern she had cut in her hands and said softly, I think I can talk to little Manting now. When Xueqi heard that, he looked at her with a straight face. She doesn't have any bad intentions, Shen Manting said slowly as she stared at her paper cut. She wants to be with Luo An and live happily ever after. Her previous resistance, suicide, and running away were all because she wanted to force Luo An to compromise. Last night, young Manting sneaked out and pretended to be her. When she heard what Shen Luoan said, she couldn't hold on any longer. You look fine now, Xueqi said. Yes, Shen Manting replied in a low voice. Little Manting is also conscious. Xueqi froze and looked at her. What do you mean? She's also awake now, but she can only watch. You've regained control? Yes. Rather than taking it back, it would be more accurate to say that little Manting had voluntarily given it up. She put down the scissors and touched the ring on the ring finger of her left hand. She said, After all, I'm married and have a child. No matter how unwilling I used to be, I have to face reality. Therefore, she decided to accept him. Little Manting must have played a part in it, but Big Manting must have figured it out on her own. Or perhaps unknowingly, the two of them had slowly merged into one, and there was no distinction between you and me. Sister-in-law, Xueqi called out. The wedding is next month. There's no change. Yes. Shen Manting smiled gently, and her face seemed to be shrouded in a layer of hazy light. That must be a wedding worth looking forward to. Xueqi looked at her calmly. His emotions were complicated as he replied, Yeah. Shen Luo and realized that in the next few days, little Manting rarely appeared. Most of the time, she interacted with him as an adult. But occasionally, the coquettish demeanor of a little girl would vaguely resemble that of young Manting. Chapter 2157. When Xueqi got married, the wedding was very grand. It was a traditional Chinese wedding, and every procedure was in accordance with the customs of the Qing dynasty. But after more than 2 years, old Madame Dongfang, who had organized Xueqi's wedding, was not as healthy as before. Old Madame Shen was a little regretful. After thinking about it, she left it to Shen Jilia to decide. When Shen Manting was asked this question, she thought for a moment and said, "I want to wear a wedding dress." As she said this, she smiled brightly. "I look like a princess. It's very beautiful." Her innocent and frank tone was filled with happiness. Shen Luoan smiled and quickly agreed. The wedding was grand, and there were many traditional elders in the family. Shen Luoan and Shen Manting had slept separately 3 days before the wedding. There were many people who came to attend the wedding. Shen Manting was so nervous that she couldn't sleep. The next day, she was dressed up with dark circles under her eyes. When they were led onto the stage, the MC asked Shen Luo, and in a slow and joyful voice, "Mr. Shen Luoan, are you willing to marry this young lady in front of you and promise that you'll be faithful to her for better or for worse, in sickness or in health?" Shen Luoan gazed deeply at Shen Manting and said sincerely, "I am." Cheers, whistles, and jeers rose and fell from the crowd. "Miss Shen Manting, are you willing to marry this man in front of you and be with him for the rest of your life? For better or for worse, in health or in sickness, you will be faithful to Mr. Shen Luoan for the rest of your life?" "I am." The cheers were even louder and more turbulent than before. Yi Qianqian almost burst into tears when she heard these words from behind. She tugged at Shen Jilia's clothes and said, "You're finally married. It's not easy." Shen Jilia smiled. "Yes, it's not easy. I have one more thing to tell you." Yi Qianqian's eyes were smiling. She wrapped her arms around his neck and said softly, "I think I'm pregnant." "Really?" Shen Jilia's eyes lit up. "Really?" Yi Qianqian saw his expression and laughed. "I tried 3 pregnancy tests, and they all had 2 wires. Ha ha." Shen Jilia didn't bother to hide his laughter. He picked Yi Qianqian up and shouted, "I knew my wife was the best." The people standing beside them all looked over. Yi Qianqian was a little embarrassed. She patted him on the shoulder and chided him. "Stop shouting. They're all looking at you." Shen Jilia was afraid that others wouldn't know, so he hugged her and shouted, "I'm going to be a father. My wife is pregnant." These words once again caused an uproar and the elders to laugh in surprise. Yi Qianqian buried her face in his chest. She couldn't help but smile. At the wedding, there was double happiness. Laughter and music filled with happiness flowed on everyone's faces and hearts. "We're married. I'm going to be a father." "Get lost, don't steal my limelight." Ha 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 ha. "Hit me." Wan Li, this seems to be the first proper ending. Sigh, I don't want to write about the matters of the adults anymore. Writing makes me so tired. I want to write about the children. Next, I'll write about the trivial matters between Dai Su, Su Mosen, and Yu Chulin. Many people might not want to see siblings fooling around, but it's okay. I haven't thought about who will be with who. But without a doubt, this is a story of a crush and a crush, but foolishly thinking that it's unrequited love. Because it's foreign, I want to try a genre that I haven't tried before. Those who know me all know my methods. It'll be a little sadistic and sweet. Chapter 2158. He wanted to see Lu Luo's message. Chapter 2159. Try reading. Mainly depends on the style of writing. Lu Luo chapter. Inscription. The Lu family has only one son for 3 generations. He finally grew up, but he was turned gay by the bastard outside. When Lu Yihan woke up from a nightmare again, it was in the cold night of New York. It was snowing heavily outside, but he was covered in cold sweat. He gasped and got up, feeling a bit depressed. He took a cigarette, lit it, and took a long drag. The smoke was very thick. It was a beautiful thing that the guy said he brought from his hometown. It didn't look like much, but in fact, it was very irritating, just like him. He got up and opened the closed curtains. Sure enough, it was snowing heavily outside. Late at night in the bustling city, there were still pedestrians coming and going with umbrellas. Sitting by the window for a long time, he was disturbed by his phone ringing. The caller was his business partner, Chen Yu. Looking at the time, it should be around 1 o'clock in the afternoon in China. "Hello." Maybe because of the cigarette, Lu Yihan's voice was a bit hoarse. Chen was very anxious. Where have you been? A project collapsed, and Luo Zhan happened to come to help you. He was hit by a car on the way. Well, that was the style. Slight abuse, and a little perverted abuse. Try reading, Ursu chapter. Inscription. Have you ever tried to love someone and it took up your whole youth? His parents only cared about showing off their love. When the company's off-season began, Li Xiqing took Su Qianxi on a trip around the world. On the first day of school, Li Jianrui successfully overslept. Seeing the alarm clock turn to 7 o'clock, Li Jianrui wanted to scratch herself to death. He hurriedly washed up, and without even eating breakfast, he immediately rushed out. However, when she just rushed to the door, she saw the boy on a bicycle, waiting at the door with a bag on his back. Black hair, blue eyes, and unbelievably white skin. The skin all over his body was as delicate and smooth as jade. It didn't look like there was anything wrong with it. He was even more beautiful than a porcelain doll. Seeing Li Jianrui's uncombed hair, he snorted. Get in the car. I'm late. The young man's voice was young and majestic, but it also contained a gentleness that was neither light nor heavy. Li Jianrui patted her small heart and immediately jumped into the back seat of the car. She shouted, hurry up, hurry up. It's the first day of high school. Wouldn't it be very embarrassing if we're late? I will, Li Mosen replied lazily. I might even be laughed at. Li Jianrui. She wanted to cry but had no tears. She pinched his hand and said angrily, why didn't you call me? Li Mosen snorted. Did you know that there was thunder in the morning? Huh. Li Jianrui was confused. Is there thunder? Yeah, it rained and there was an earthquake. You didn't know, right? Li Jianrui immediately realized that she had been teased. She gritted her teeth and grabbed his face with both hands. She gritted her teeth and said, you're so annoying. I'll tell Mom and Dad. Li Mosen chuckled and said, sit tight. His speed suddenly increased. Li Jianrui immediately exclaimed and hugged his waist. Just as the small bicycle entered the campus, there was a frenzied shout from the surroundings. Oh my God! Who is that? Li Mosen. Has a girlfriend? Chapter 2160. Li Mosen, a senior in grade 12, had always been a godlike existence in Kongya Aristocratic High School. Not only was he good-looking, but he was also good at sports. He was the captain of the school's basketball team and the champion of the provincial junior math competition. He had won all kinds of awards since he was a child. The most unbearable thing was that he had an appearance that made people crazy. He had deep facial features, gem-like blue eyes, and slightly curly black hair that was elegant and sexy. Every time he sweated on the basketball court, his every move was enough to cause the girls to scream wildly. However, on the first day of the new school year, the most handsome guy in school actually brought his girlfriend to school. For a moment, it caused a sensation in the whole school. Many girls' hearts were broken. They bit their handkerchiefs and wished they could go to grade 12 class A to confront Li Mosen. Tell me, do you love me or her? However, no one had the guts to do so. Watching Li Mosen put down the little girl in the school uniform from afar, the little girls who had already secretly fallen in love with him burst into tears. Li Jianrui certainly felt that she had been surrounded by many people's eyes, but she did not mind. She carried her bag and hurried in the direction of the school building. What's the hurry? Li Mosen said helplessly. Do you know the way? I'll take you there. Then hurry up. Li Jianrui was so anxious that she stomped her feet. She watched him park the bicycle and then took his hand. Hurry up. The bell hasn't rung yet, Li Mosen said as he threw his bag on his shoulder. Look, they are all walking slowly. Oh, they are seniors, and I am a freshman. Of course it's different. Li Jianrui was not convinced. I still have to go make new friends. Li Mosen laughed and reached out to rub her fluffy head. Comb your hair. You still want to make friends with someone like this? It's frightening. Such an action caused the campus to once again be filled with wails, and more onlookers gathered to watch. Li Jianrui, who was insensitive, also felt that something was wrong. She looked around and whispered, Brother Mosen, why do I feel that many people are looking at me? Well, Li Mosen gave her a lazy look. You look good, of course they are looking at you. The face of Li Jianyue was very similar to Su Qianxi's. However, his eyebrows and eyes were very similar to Li Xiqing's, so it was obvious that he was the child of Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi. But the only flaw was that student Li Ersu had successfully inherited their good genes, but at the same time, they had gone awry. Li Xiqing was smart, Su Qianxi was strong, and even Li Jianqian was a freak who had skipped grades since he was a child. When it was Li Jianyue's turn, she couldn't be said to be stupid. It was just that with so many comparisons, her qualifications seemed to be more ordinary. Li Jianyue felt that something was amiss when she heard his words. I don't think they think I'm pretty. They just hate the way they look at me. I didn't offend them, did I? It's as if they want to eat me up. Li Mosen smiled. That might be because of me. I'm a little famous in school. Oh, is that so? Li Jianyue looked around and finally believed his a little. After being led by Li Mosen to his own class, the bell for the next class rang. Li Jianyue could clearly feel that everywhere they went, there were countless eyes looking at them. Or perhaps they were looking at her. Chapter 2161. Li Jianyue had been very delicate since she was a child. Li Xiqing liked long hair, so she had seaweed-like hair since she was a child. Her skin was naturally healthy and delicate. It was so fair and delicate that no matter who she stood next to, it was especially fair and delicate. She was no exception when compared to her own mother. Especially when she smiled, it was sweet and lovely, revealing 2 small canine teeth. Compared to Su Qianxi's quiet and introverted personality, she was more lively. On the first day of registration, Li Jianyue relied on her outer appearance, and many people came to talk to her in several classes. There were men and women. The morning classes ended, but in fact, there was not much content. The atmosphere was very relaxed and pleasant. Just at noon, when Li Jianyue was still packing her school bag, suddenly there were exclamations around her. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a sensation. Li Jianyue looked up and saw a tall figure walking over. He was more than 1.8 meters tall, especially among his peers. Who is this? Ah, you don't know. This is a senior in year 3. His name is Li Mosen. Ah, so handsome. He must be mixed race. His eyes are so beautiful. He's coming over. Could it be that he's looking for me? In your dreams. Li Jianyue heard the discussion around her and yawned. She stood up and said, Why are you here? The uniform of the aristocratic high school was better than that of ordinary schools. The boy's uniform was a white shirt with the school emblem embroidered on the left chest. It was very exquisite with black gold buttons. The school pants were a pair of black trousers, which outlined his straight and slender legs. I'm taking you to eat. Li Mosen put one hand in the trouser pocket of his school uniform, looking especially sunny and handsome. Ah, Mosen, Senior Mosen, look here. So handsome, my idol. He looks like a prince in a fairy tale. Li Jianyue was speechless. She looked at Li Mosen and muttered in a low voice. Are they blind? How is this handsome? Li Mosen reached out and patted her head. You have no taste. There are so many of my fans in school. You don't know how lucky you are. Hey, don't touch my hair. It's all messed up. Li Jianyue slapped his hand away. It took me a long time to comb it. I still have class in the afternoon. There were a few boys following behind Li Mosen. All of them were from the basketball team. From the moment they saw Li Jianyue, their eyes lit up. One of them stepped forward and extended his hand to Li Jianyue. Hello. Sister Li. My name is Xueqi. You can just call me traditional Chinese medicine. Just as she was about to reach out, Xueqi's hand was slapped away. Another guy squeezed over and smiled. Ignore him. Traditional Chinese medicine is a freak. My name is Lu Yuanyang. You can call me Brother Yang. Get lost. Zhongyi shoved Lu Yuanyang away. I was here first. Pooh, you pervert. Don't scare Sister Li. I'm scared when I see your face. Go away. F*CK. I'll beat you up. Come on, do you think I'm afraid of you? Li Jianyue. Li Mosen curled his lips and stepped forward to hold her hand. Let's go. Ignore them. Ah, who's that girl? They're holding hands. They're holding hands. Could it be his girlfriend? Wait, my heart can't take it anymore. My idol. Li Jianyue felt her scalp go numb in the chaos. The thought of having to spend the next 3 years in such an environment filled her with complicated emotions. Yes, you're right. It's the first time I've written a school novel, yeah. I'll go with my usual style. Sweet and torturous. Those who want a girl's heart are about to fall into the pit. Chapter 2162. Along the way, they were the most eye-catching presents. When they finally arrived at the school cafeteria, Li Jianyue thought that she would be able to relax. She didn't expect to be stared at by the surrounding people. Li Jianyue tugged at Li Mosen's clothes weakly and asked, "Brother Mosen, why are people looking at us?" "Because Mosen is the school hunk," Xueqi suddenly replied. "A lot of people like Mosen. He's handsome and good at studying. He has a lot of fans," traditional Chinese medicine answered suddenly, his voice coming from behind. Li Jianyue's eyes widened. "Fans?" "That's right," Lu Yuanyang chimed in and said in a low voice. "They're all die-hard fans who only look at looks. Mosen is mixed race, so he's eye-catching just by looking at his face. You're also good-looking, so I'm guessing there will be a lot of people looking at you." Li Jianyue had a bad feeling in her heart. She muttered, "Why do I feel that my days in the future won't be easy?" "No," Xueqi patted his chest. "I will protect you in the future. If anyone bullies you, I will be the first to deal with them." Lu Yuanyang looked at Zhong Yikuan meaningfully and said, "It's good enough that you can protect yourself." "Haha, I'm not like you. You are just a street rat. I'm still better than you. Who doesn't know you now? Everyone thinks that you are gay with Mosen." "Hey, what's wrong with me? Being gay with Mosen is not being gay with you. Why are you talking so much? Mosen loves me and I love Mosen. If we are gay, then let's be gay. Right, Mosen?" Xueqi winked at Li Mosen coquettishly. "Bring me along for the team battle tonight." "No," Li Mosen said without hesitation. "After eating, I will bring her to familiarize herself with the environment." "Okay." "No problem." Li Jianyue hadn't recovered from their strange behavior when she heard Mosen ask, "Do you want to take a nap at noon?" "No." "Then let's go shopping later." Li Mosen made the final decision. Li Jianyue didn't have any objections. But after Li Mosen said this, she suddenly felt that the surrounding people were looking at her strangely. After getting their food, they obediently found a seat. The 4 of them occupied a table. Li Jianyue felt as if there were needles on her back. She finally finished her meal and walked around to familiarize herself with the environment. Then, she hurriedly said that she wanted to return to the classroom. However, when he returned to the classroom, he found that everyone was moving around. When Li Jianyue came in, many people glanced at her and then left in groups of 2 or 3. She walked back to her seat in the morning. Her bag was placed on the table, and in her seat sat a girl wearing glasses. The girl looked ordinary, but her eyes were especially sharp and bright under her glasses. When he saw Li Jianyue coming over, he adjusted his glasses and asked, "Are you Li Jianyue?" Li Jianyue was stunned, but she quickly nodded. "You know me." "I'm not the only one who knows you now. The whole school knows you," the bespectacled girl said as she looked at Li Jianyue. "You're really pretty." Li Jianyue felt her hair stand on end. She smiled and said, "Thank you. The teacher has finished arranging the seats. Your seat is in the 4th row of the 3rd group, the same table as Quan Jingyi." The bespectacled girl pointed at the seat. A boy was already lying on it. The remaining seat was empty. "Thank you." Chapter 2163. "It's Li Mosen again." Li Jianyue was speechless and said, "My surname is Li and so is his. He is my brother." The bespectacled girl looked incredulous. "He is mixed race and you are obviously not. How can you be brother and sister? Don't lie to me." "It's true. He is my brother. If you don't believe me, you can ask him." Li Jianyue felt a little annoyed. She had been surrounded by Li Mosen ever since she entered school. She was speechless as if she was a monkey. The bespectacled girl could also see that Li Jianyue was a little annoyed. She quickly said, "My name is Han Yu. You can call me Xiao Yu. Let's be friends. I was just curious." He pushed up his glasses and smiled brightly. Then he glanced at the table he had just pointed at and said, "However, I have to tell you that when Quan Jingyi was in junior high school, he was a bully. He had a bad temper. If he got angry, he would hit someone. You'd better not provoke him." "How do you know?" Han Yu pushed her glasses and smiled meaningfully. "Because I used to be in the same junior high as him." "Oh." Li Jianyue didn't take it to heart. "I'll go over first." "Okay." Han Yu nodded. After watching her leave, she immediately lowered her head and quietly took out her phone from her bag. She sent a message to the private group chat. "Big news, the girl who was brought to school by a man today is his sister." Li Jianyue walked over. A boy who was obviously very tall was lying on the table. He was crooked and breathing. She could tell that he was sleeping soundly. Li Jianyue hung up her bag and took out a piece of tissue to wipe the seat. After wiping the chair and the table, she threw the tissue away. When she walked back, the boy who was sleeping soundly just now got up. He yawned and stretched. There were red marks on his face from his clothes. His hair was a little messy and his legs were very long. He directly crossed Li Jianyue's position and blocked her way. Li Jianyue was not in a hurry. She waited for him to finish before walking in. Quan Jingyi glanced at Li Jianyue and asked, "Classmate, what time is it?" Li Jianyue glanced at her watch. 1:48. "Thank you." Quan Jingyi replied with a word and got up to loosen his muscles. As soon as he stood up, he felt a heavy pressure. Li Jianyue couldn't help but raise her head to look at him. It was really high. Is he overdeveloped? Li Jianyue took out the book and muttered to herself. He averted his gaze and realized that he wasn't the only one looking at him. The other students in the class couldn't help but look over as well. However, they quickly averted their gazes. Quan Jingyi left. Almost as soon as he walked out of the door, there were whispers in the class. "That's Quan Jingyi. Stay away from him." "Who is that?" "Problem boy. He has a bad reputation. I used to be in the same junior high school as him. He skipped classes every 2 or 3 days to get into fights and was almost expelled. It was only after his parents suppressed it that he was able to graduate smoothly." "Is their family very powerful?" "Damn powerful. His father is the deputy mayor. Don't you think he's awesome?" Li Jianyue already knew what to do and silently moved her chair a little further away. It wasn't until the bell rang that Quan Jingyi returned to his seat unhurriedly. He looked much more sober than before. Li Jianyue found that he was quite good-looking. He had a high nose and the skin on his face wasn't pale, but he looked very masculine. Chapter 2164. Quan Jingyi's gaze was a little cold. The way he looked at her wasn't friendly. Li Jianyue didn't dodge his question. Instead, she smiled and said, "Everyone says that you're a bad student. I've never seen a bad student like you." She turned her head and muttered to herself, "I didn't expect him to be so good." Quan Jingyi didn't expect to get such an answer. He was slightly stunned, but he quickly turned his head back. Inexplicably, the tips of his ears felt a little hot. The first class in the afternoon was history. The history teacher seemed to be a particularly shrewd female teacher. She wore a pair of rimless glasses, and the thick lenses covered her small eyes. At this moment, she pushed her glasses and said, "Hello everyone, I'm your history teacher. My surname is Zhang. The Zhang from Gongzhang. Do you hear me?" "Yes." "In my class, I don't need students who don't listen. If you don't want to listen, you can leave, but you're not allowed to sleep or be distracted. Otherwise, I'll deal with you as truancy. Do you understand?" "Understood." "Louder, I didn't hear you." "Understood." This time, the voices were much louder. Li Jianyue was also one of the voices. Quan Jingyi glanced at her with a faint smile. His eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. Li Jianyue clearly saw it and was a little confused. Teacher Zhang pushed her glasses and nodded with satisfaction. She said, "Now let's start the class. Turn to the first page." Quan Jingyi had just had enough sleep, but he didn't sleep. He opened the textbook and sat in his seat in a daze. Li Jianyue wasn't particularly intelligent since she was young. However, in order to catch up with her academic results and not let herself fall too far behind, she was very serious when listening to the class. As she listened, she suddenly heard a cry of surprise. Then, an unknown white object flew over. Li Jianyue saw it from the corner of her eyes. It was the teacher's pen. She was shocked and then saw that the pen was steadily caught by Quan Jingyi. The students in the class were shocked and whispered, "So powerful? He really practiced. The delinquents are extraordinary. Who is that? I heard that his name is Quan Jingyi. He's very arrogant." Silence. Teacher Zhang looked at Quan Jingyi with a straight face. "You're spacing out during class. You're quite quick to pick up the pen. Bring it up." Quan Jingyi stood up and took the brush back. "What's your name?" "Quan Jingyi." Quan Jingyi sounded a little lazy, but he was still cooperative. However, his sloppy attitude made Teacher Zhang very unhappy. He shouted, "Write it yourself." Quan Jingyi was a little impatient, but he still picked up the pen and wrote his name on the paper. Li Jianyue realized that his handwriting was quite nice. It looked a little elegant and sloppy, but it was very clear. "Your handwriting is not bad. You may leave." Teacher Zhang pushed up his glasses and said, "Student number 17, Quan Jingyi, is daydreaming in class. This is a warning. Be careful in the future." Li Jianyue finally understood that the teacher was here to put on a show of strength. And Quan Jingyi was undoubtedly the chicken that was killed to warn the monkey. "TSK, TSK, TSK." He turned around to take a look, and sure enough, all of them were sitting upright. After that, the learning atmosphere was much better than before. Chapter 2165. How would he dare to do that now? His father used to be the deputy mayor of a neighboring city. Now, he's the mayor of Kingstown. He should restrain himself. Many people are watching him. Oh, I see. I thought his father just married a mistress and he wanted to leave a good impression on his stepmother. Their provocative words caused more and more people to look at them. The information in their words seemed to be a little too much. Li Jianyue glanced at Quan Jingyi. Unexpectedly, Quan Jingyi just glanced at them lazily and directly leaned on the table without saying a word. When those people saw that, they felt unconvinced. They kicked his table and said, "Hey, what are you afraid of? You don't dare to move after being poked at?" Sigh, forget it. He's probably afraid of being expelled. Now, he's even more timid than a woman. Ha ha ha. But no matter what they said, Quan Jingyi didn't react at all. Those people looked at him and felt that they were asking for trouble. Li Jianyue was angry when she heard that. She whispered, "Hey, Quan Jingyi." Quan Jingyi ignored her and lay down lazily. Li Jianyue muttered, "What? I thought he was very powerful." Everyone had demonized Quan Jingyi. It made her feel that Quan Jingyi was a hot-tempered person who would hit people at the slightest disagreement. Now it seemed that he was just like that. Although Li Jianyue didn't want her deskmate to be a bad student, after hearing so many rumors, she still felt a little disappointed in her heart. Soon, after the next few classes, Quan Jingyi didn't say a word. He was indeed very obedient. After school, Li Jianyue went to the bathroom first. When she came out, she found a few girls standing by the sink, looking at her with a smile. Li Jianyue was startled and took a step back. But, maybe they weren't looking at me? After thinking about it, she mustered up her courage and squeezed toward the sink. "Hello, Junior." One of the girls had dyed yellow hair. She was also dressed like a hooligan and had 2 earrings in her ears. When Li Jianyue heard this, she immediately realized that they might really be looking for her. While washing her hands, Li Jianyue pretended not to hear. "Junior, your name is Li Jianyue, right?" Now that she had been called out, Li Jianyue could no longer pretend to be dumb. He could only turn around and ask weakly, "What's the matter?" Li Jianyue took after Su Qianxi's looks and personality. Some things should be avoided if possible. She could tell at a glance that these girls were bad students. It was only the first day of school and they were already looking for trouble with her. Without a doubt, it must be Li Mosen's rotten peach blossom. Li Jianyue felt a little wronged. She had already created a villain in her heart and beat Li Mosen over and over again. But who knew? The bad girl giggled and said, "It's nothing, I just want to make friends with you. My name is Xueqi. I'm your brother's fan. Ah! Li Jianyue was a little confused. How did you know that I'm his sister? I guessed it. Xueqi's eyes curved into a smile. Look at how pretty you are. Mosen treats you so well. He brings you with him everywhere he goes. He even sent you to school this morning. You should know that Mosen rarely talks to girls in school, let alone treats you so well. So you must be his sister. Xueqi's eyes curved into a smile. Li Jianyue. Chapter 2166. When Xueqi heard this, she didn't mind. She patted Li Jianyue's shoulder and said, "So, sister, can you tell me what kind of girl your brother likes?" Xueqi's face bloomed into a chrysanthemum-like smile, and her flaming red lips were particularly eye-catching. Li Jianyue was silent for a moment and said, "I don't know what kind of girl Brother Mosen likes, but I know what kind of girl he hates." "What kind of girl?" "Disheveled." Li Jianyue glanced at her open neckline. Inside the neckline, everything that should be there was not there, but she had left it open. It was really not a good look. When Xueqi heard this, she immediately fastened the neckline and asked, "What else?" "Heavy makeup," Li Jianyue said mercilessly. Xueqi's expression changed immediately and said, "Are you serious?" Li Jianyue nodded sincerely and said, "Really?" Xueqi was a little frustrated and asked, "What else?" "Hair dyed." Xueqi was angry. "You deliberately caught me and said that, right?" Li Jianyue looked innocent. "No, what I said is true. If you don't believe me, you can ask Brother Mosen." Xueqi was speechless. If she could talk to Li Mosen, would she need to come to the toilet to block people? "Is there anything else?" Xueqi asked. Li Jianyue thought for a moment and said, "Maybe he likes gentle girls. After all, there are no boys who don't like gentle girls." Xueqi's face was completely gloomy. She looked at Li Jianyue and looked like she was about to cry. Li Jianyue was shocked. She hurriedly said, "Don't cry. Actually, you can just be yourself. If you have your own characteristics, people who like you will still like you. It's useless to deliberately cater to other people's preferences." Xueqi didn't quite believe it. "Really?" Li Jianyue looked serious. "Really?" After coming out of the toilet, when Li Jianyue returned to class to get her school bag, the students who stayed on duty were almost done cleaning. When one of the boys saw Li Jianyue, the tips of his ears were slightly red. He came forward to greet her. "Hello, my name is Zhang Hao. Are you Li Jianyue?" Li Jianyue smiled. "Yes, hello. Arsu." Li Mosen's voice came from outside. A few girls followed behind him, pushing and shoving each other shyly. When Li Jianyue saw Li Mosen, she said to Zhang Hao, "My brother is here to pick me up. I'm going back. See you tomorrow." Zhang Hao blushed and nodded. "Okay, see you tomorrow." Li Jianyue carried her school bag and walked out. She found that Li Mosen's complexion was particularly bad. Li Mosen reached out and tucked her under his armpit. He lifted her up like a little chick and said, "You're so capable. I thought you were lost." Li Jianyue was already used to his way of carrying himself. However, in school, she couldn't help but blush. She flapped her legs and said, "I'm still wearing a dress. Don't cause me to be exposed." Hearing that, Li Mosen put her down and pressed his big hand on her head. Don't talk to boys randomly in the future. There are a lot of liars in high school. You're so stupid. Don't get cheated. Go. Li Jianyue slapped his hand away. "Why are your words getting more and more annoying? My brother doesn't scold me anymore. It's your turn. You're the stupid one." Chapter 2167. Li Jianyue was pinned down and could clearly feel the envious and hateful gazes around her. She twisted and said, "Brother Mosen, a girl came to the toilet to stop me just now. She seemed to like you a lot and asked me what you like." "What did you say?" "Oh, I just said a bunch of things. Anyway, I said what she was like." Li Mosen couldn't help but pinch her cheek. "Naughty." Li Jianyue was still a little proud. "Anyway, You won't have puppy love in high school. You won't embarrass me, will you? No. Lee Mosin looked helpless. Mom and Dad are coming back next week. Are you happy? No, Lee Jianyue said with a look of disgust. Mom and Dad only know how to show off. It's so infuriating. Mom is already so old, but Dad still coaxes her like a treasure all day. He holds her in his hands and is afraid that she will fall. He's so annoying. Dad is a good man. You have to find a husband like this in the future. Do you understand? Dad is good, but there won't be a second Lee Siqing in the world. Who said that? Lee Mosin found his car and saw a pile of gifts and love letters in the back seat. I can be so good. If you don't believe me, you can wait and see in the future. As he spoke, he picked up the pile of things and threw them into the nearby trash can. Lee Jianyue was shocked and said, "How can you do this? You threw so many things? You're not throwing them away?" Lee Mosin also looked at Lee Jianyue strangely. There are so many things here. Where should I put them? School bag. My bag is full. I can't put these things in. Then it's a pity that you threw them away. Lee Jianyue's heart ached. And the chocolate? Lee Mosin laughed. Get in the car. Lee Jianyue directly jumped up and grabbed the clothes at his waist. Next time there's candy for me. Don't throw it away. Got it. When they returned home, Nanny Rong had already prepared the meal. Seeing them return, she wiped her hands with a smile and said, "Wash your hands quickly and eat. By the way, your grandfather just called and told you to rest and study early after eating. You must not play games anymore, or else he will call to check on you." Lee Jianyue stuck out her tongue and shrugged her shoulders. However, with her sly look, it was obvious what she was thinking. Lee Mosin didn't expose her and ate quietly. Sure enough, as soon as Lee Jianyue finished eating, she immediately picked up her phone and went to the battlefield. No homework? I finished it at school. Lee Jianyue said confidently. Aya, Brother Mosin, come and help me. I can't beat them. Lee Mosin sat behind her and reached out with both hands to hold her. He took the phone and looked at the score. He clicked his tongue in disdain and said, "You're as fierce as a tiger, but your score is 0. You're really the best Zhuge Liang I've ever seen." Lee Jianyue replied, "Be more respectful when you speak. It's 1 against 5, all right? Is there a difference?" Lee Mosin said disdainfully. Then, his slender fingers operated on the screen. That's too despicable. 1 against 5. Lee Jianyue clenched her small fists excitedly and shouted, "That's too much." What's the hurry? I'm full HP. Lee Mosin looked very calm. He walked coquettishly between the 5 people and quickly killed 3 of them. 6,666. Lee Jianyue gestured. Run. However, Lee Mosin had no intention of running at all. He directly used a big move to kill the support with low HP and finally defeated the tank. Pentakill. I want to take a screenshot. Wait. Lee Jianyue held his hand excitedly. She didn't realize that the 2 of them were directly pressed together. Chapter 2168. Lee Jianyue didn't seem to be aware that she was being despised. She even said proudly, "What's wrong with me being promising? I'm the one who's promising." Lee Jianyue posted her perfect 5-kill record on her WeChat moments. She said proudly, "Brother Mosin, help me play another round. I've been wanting to train Sister Diao Chan recently, but it's too difficult. Do your homework first." I'm done. Even so, you're not allowed to play. What will you say when Grandpa calls to check on you later? I'll say that Brother Mosin took me to play. Lee Jianyue raised her eyebrows and said proudly, "My brother is coming back soon. I'll have to PK with him then. He'll always look down on me." Your brother won't compete with you, Lee Mosin said. Why? Insulting my intelligence. You're so annoying. Lee Jianyue pushed him away. I'll play by myself then. The last one. Okay. Lee Mosin sat beside her and watched her play the game quietly. After the last round, Lee Jianyue went to take a shower. When she came back, she found that there were many likes and comments on her WeChat moments. Rong Pan Pan. 66666 miss, take me flying. Oh Xiao Xiao. When did Sister Ursu become so powerful? I don't believe it. Brother Mosen must have given it to you to play with. Li Jianyue replied proudly. Yes, how about it? If you're not convinced, let's fight. Big brother, dear father, dear queen mother, and brother Chu, all liked the post. When she saw brother Chu, a beautiful smile appeared on Li Jianyue's face. She clicked on Yu Chulin's profile picture and saw a new update. The basketball court is always exceptionally quiet late at night. The accompanying picture was of a basketball court and a red figure doing a slam dunk. Li Jianqian was getting taller. His back was slender, and the ordinary red jersey looked particularly handsome on him. Li Jianyue liked the post and commented, "When will Brother Chu come to Kingstown to play?" "I miss you," Brother Chu quickly replied. "Tomorrow." When Li Jianyue saw it, she thought that he was joking and quickly replied, "Then you will be a puppy tomorrow." "Brother Chu, what should we do when we get there?" Li Jianyue replied, "I'm a little pig." Imperial capital. While Li Jianqian was sweating profusely, Yu Chulin was drinking water by the side of the basketball court. He suddenly laughed as he held his phone. Li Jianqian panted heavily and threw the basketball aside. "You're flirting with my sister again." "How could I?" Although Yu Chulin said that, his phone quickly replied, "It's a deal. Treat me to a meal tomorrow." Li Jianqian opened a bottle of water for himself and quickly gulped it down before asking, "Did you tell her?" "I told her, but she didn't believe me." Yu Chulin threw his phone on the grass and lay down. Looking up, the night sky of the imperial capital was always pitch black. Not a single star. All of a sudden, Yu Chulin asked, "Why did you suddenly decide to return to Kingstown to pursue postgraduate studies?" "You don't want to go?" Li Jianqian glanced at him and screwed the cap shut to lie down. "I don't want to stay in the capital. I'm tired of it." "What about your grandparents?" "It's not like I'm not coming back. It's the same no matter where I study." Li Jianqian stared at the night sky above his head. "The day after tomorrow is the anniversary of great-grandfather's death. I can go back to pay my respects." "Okay." The corners of Yu Chulin's lips curled up. "Let's go then." The sky in Kingstown was much bluer than in the capital. One could even breathe in the air without fear of inhaling a mouthful of smog. Chapter 2169. Li Jianrui was in class and only found out about the news when it was time for lunch break. Li Mosen called out to her at the door of her classroom, "Li Jianrui, let's go." Li Mosen had always been eye-catching. Many people looked over and were extremely excited when he shouted. She thought that Li Mosen was going to take her to lunch. Unexpectedly, when she stood up, she heard Li Mosen shout, "Bring your bag. I'm applying for leave for you." Damn, are they going on a date? Bull*T, they are brother and sister. It's good to have a brother. He's so bold to skip class. Oh, he's so handsome. Senior Mosen, is Li Jianrui his sister? Why don't they look alike at all? Li Jianrui was surrounded by shouts. She bit the bullet and picked up her bag and walked forward. Li Mosen swaggered out of the campus with her. Li Jianrui couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? Why did you ask for leave?" "Your brother is back. Didn't you know?" Li Mosen pressed her head. "Yu Chulin is here too." Li Jianrui's mouth formed an O shape. She couldn't believe it and said, "No way?" "Really? Didn't they tell you?" Li Mosen raised his eyebrows. "I saw that you guys were chatting excitedly on WeChat." Li Jianrui didn't realize that there was a hint of jealousy in her words. She took out her phone from her bag and opened it. Indeed, she received a few WeChat messages. "Brother Chu. We're here, Brother Chu. Piglet, treat me to lunch." Li Jianrui looked a little regretful and said, "I thought he was joking with me. Boo-hoo, how did I become a piglet?" Li Mosen saw her expression and pouted. "It's fine if you call him that. Can you really become a piglet?" "No, this is a kind of attitude, a kind of dignity." Li Jianrui said seriously. "I could have called him a puppy." Li Mosen glanced at her. "Childish." "Oh." Li Jianrui was even more regretful. She hugged Li Mosen's arm and said, "What should we do?" Are we going to see brother and brother Chu now? Seeing her expression, Li Mosen was a little annoyed. He lifted her under his armpit and directly carried her away. Yeah. Aya, what should I do? I'm wearing such an ugly school uniform. My brother will laugh at me when he sees it. How is it ugly? Li Mosen was almost defeated by her. It's beautiful and cute. Really? Li Jianyue's eyes lit up. I was talking about the school uniform. Li Jianqian and Yu Chulin had arrived a long time ago. The family had arranged for a chauffeur to pick them up from the airport. When Li Jianyue and Li Mosen returned home, they saw the two teenagers sitting on the sofa. One was red, and the other was white. Both of them looked very fair. Li Jianqian was 17 years old and looked even better. His eyebrows and eyes were very similar to Li Xiqing's, but his facial features were also similar to Su Qianxi's, except that he was more angular and looked more masculine. The young man's immature face carried a youthful aura. When she saw Li Jianqian, Li Jianyue's eyes lit up and she shouted, "Wow, brother!" Li Jianqian was originally sitting on the sofa talking to Yu Chulin. When he heard that, his gaze looked over. His eyes softened and he stood up. Li Jianyue threw her school bag aside and pounced on Li Jianqian. She shouted, "Brother! I missed you so much. Kiss me. Mua." Chapter 2170. Li Jianyue refused to budge. She hung on to him and pouted. "Give me a kiss. Just give me a kiss." Li Jianqian pulled her down and threw her onto the sofa. Li Jianyue was not annoyed at being thrown. Instead, she giggled. She turned to look at the youth in red and called out, "Brother Chu." Yu Chulin reached out and patted her head. He smiled and said, "Ursu has grown up. But aren't you 17 years old? Why did you repeat a year?" Li Jianyue felt as if thousands of arrows had pierced her heart. She sat up with her hands on her hips and said, "You're the one who repeated a year. It's normal for a 17-year-old to be in the first year of high school." "Is that so?" Yu Chulin looked at Li Jianqian in disbelief. Li Jianqian happened to look over and raised his eyebrows. Invisible contempt was the most fatal. Li Jianyue felt as if her heart had been stabbed by knives. She wanted to cry but no tears came out. "Well, Ursu, this is normal." Li Mosen walked over and sat beside Li Jianyue. "You two perverts can't be compared to our Ursu." "Exactly." Li Jianyue immediately echoed. She seemed to have found comfort and hid behind Li Mosen. "Brother Mosen is the best. You two only know how to bully me. You're the one who spoiled her and made her repeat a year, right?" Yu Chulin immediately put a label on him. "You spoiled her since she was young. She will suffer in the future. You can't spoil her forever." His words were a little harsh. Li Mosen glanced at Yu Chulin and said, "I'm telling the truth. Let Daesu handle the outstanding matters at home. Ursu is a girl. It's fine as long as she's happy." Yu Chulin frowned. "That works." He looked at Li Jianqian. "Aren't you going to do anything about it?" Mosen is right. It was rare for Li Jianqian to be on the opposite side of Yu Chulin. Li Jianyue's eyes lit up. Just when she thought that he really doted on her, she heard Li Jianqian say, "I don't expect her to be outstanding with someone like her." Li Jianyue took an apple from the table and threw it over. She said angrily, "Annoying." Li Jianqian caught it firmly and smiled. "We're not eating now. Grandpa wants us to go back to the old mansion for dinner." "Now." Li Jianyue glanced at the clock on the wall. "It's already past 1 o'clock. Grandpa, Grandma, and little brother have eaten, right?" "I don't know, but Moyun just called me and cried to me, saying that you don't care about him." Li Mosen was a little gloating. "Maybe my brother has been fed into a little fat pig." Li Jianyue. "How ruthless." Yu Chulin reminded her sternly, "That's your younger brother." Li Xiqing had a pair of twins. The older one was a boy named Daesu, and the younger one was a girl named Ursu. In addition, there was an adopted son and a second child. The adopted son was called Li Mosen, and the second child was called Li Moyun. More than once, Li Moyun wondered why his elder brother and sister were called Daesu and Ursu while he didn't even have the word Su. Later, When he found out that his dog was called Little Sue, he felt better. They were the same species as the dog, but he and Brother Mosen were different from them. With this understanding, Lee Mo-yoon even walked with the wind. When he talked to Dae-soo and Ursu, he would raise his head and puff out his chest. He was extremely proud. However, pride came with a price. One time, he was so proud that he said to Lee Jianyue, "Brother is so smart, but you're so stupid. Did mom and dad carry the wrong baby when they gave birth to you?" Lee Ursu was upset for the whole day. Later, she didn't know how Lee Mosen found out, but he reported it to Lee Si-ching, who had always doted on his daughter. Chapter 2171. Lee Ursu was upset for the whole day. Lee Mosen somehow found out about it and reported it to Lee Si-ching, who had always doted on his daughter. As for Lee Mo-yoon, he was thrown to the old mansion by Lee Si-ching. From then on, he didn't even walk with his head held high. He didn't even raise his head or puff out his chest. He was afraid that he would bump into his grandmother and smile at her kind face. "Little Mo-yoon, Grandma just made some food. Come and try it." "Little Mo-yoon, Grandma bought some snacks for you. They are especially good for your health. Come and try it." "Little Mo-yoon, Grandma bought some revision materials for you. They are especially good for your studies. Come and try it." Lee Mo-yoon thought to himself, "I was wrong. I want to go home." However, there was no use regretting it. Not only did Lee Mo-yoon have to settle his daily needs at the old mansion, but he was also sent to and from school by his grandmother. Every day, his grandmother watched him eat 2 big bowls of rice. He grew from a thin 11-year-old boy to a little fatty who weighed 160 kilograms. Lee Mosen was determined not to let him return to Yushio. He had thought that since they both had the same name, they could be brothers. He was too naive. When he heard that Lee Jianqian had returned from the capital and would be studying in Kingstown, he almost burst into tears. When he heard the commotion outside, the little fatty skipped out. When he saw his biological brother getting out of the black Bentley, he immediately ran up to him and shouted, "Brother! My biological brother!" When Lee Jianqian saw Lee Mo-yoon, he burst out laughing. Yu Chu-lin looked sympathetic. "Mo-yoon, do you still remember me?" "Brother Chu." Lee Mo-yoon sniffled and looked aggrieved. When he saw Lee Mosen, he shot him a hateful look. "You're a bad guy." Lee Mosen looked at him seriously. "I'm doing it for your own good. Look at how well you've been eating recently." Lee Jianrui laughed heartily. "Fatty. Shut up." Lee Mo-yoon was furious, but he quickly pulled Lee Jianqian and said, "Brother, Grandma said she misses you. Come in quickly and let Grandma see how thin you are." His words were filled with deep resentment. Lee Jianqian smiled and followed him in. Lee Jianyue laughed mercilessly. "Little fatty, don't walk so fast." Lee Mosen followed him in and said, "It's just a summer vacation. Why do you look like you're blowing air into your lungs?" The little fatty got even angrier and turned around to hit him. However, Lee Mosen was tall and easily blocked him. He said, "Little shorty, you can hit me again when you grow up." The little fatty was full of grievances and hugged Lee Jianqian's thigh. "Brother. Big brother. Please tell Dad that I don't want to stay at Grandma's house anymore. I don't want to eat so much." Boo-hoo, the little girl next door used to blush when she saw me. But now, she even laughs at me when she sees me. The difference is too big. I can't take it. That's enough. Lee Jianqian pushed his head away. "In the future, I'll also be living in school. Mosen and Ursu will still be living at home. I can save you now, but I can't save you forever." "Ah, you're back?" Qin Shuhua's face was full of surprise. She turned around and shouted, "Lu Saw, you're back. Let's eat." "Yes," Lu Saw replied with a smile. "Third young master, can Jianlin drink fish soup now?" "No," a teenager's voice sounded. Lee Jianlin closed his book and looked towards the kitchen. "Grandma Lu, I'm allergic to fish soup." Chapter 2172. Lee Jianlin was 11 years old, which was a month younger than Lee Mo-yoon. However, he looked taller than Lee Mo-yoon. Lee Mo-yoon was originally quite handsome, but after staying in the old mansion for more than a month, He had become a dwarf. When he saw Li Jianlin, Li Maoyun felt even more wronged. He walked forward and sat beside Li Jianlin. Jianlin, your mom cooks so well. Why don't you get fat? Li Jianlin was tall and handsome. He had inherited Li Jinan's toughness, but he also had Yi Yuyu's gentleness and calmness. When he heard Li Maoyun's words, he smiled and said, "Maybe it's because I don't eat whatever people put in my mouth." Li Maoyun was speechless. He looked at Li Jianlin for a long time and sighed. "Jianlin, you've become bad." Li Jianlin looked at him calmly. "No, I've always been this bad." Li Maoyun was speechless. Sob, sob, sob. There's really no love in this world. Li Jianyue and Li Mosen looked at Li Maoyun and laughed mercilessly. When Qin Shuhua saw them like that, she smiled and said, "You're laughing so happily. Go wash your hands and eat." With that, she put down the plate in her hand and looked at Li Jianlin. "Jianlin, ask your dad to come out for dinner." "Okay, Grandma." Li Jianlin stood up and quickly went to knock on the door. At that moment, the door was closed. Li Jianlin knocked twice and shouted, "Dad, Mom, come out for dinner." Soon, a voice came from inside. "Coming." It was Yi Yuyu's voice. When he heard the answer, Li Jianlin immediately said, "Then I'll leave first." "Okay." After Yi Yuyu replied, she reached behind her in exasperation and asked, "Are you done yet?" "That's right. What's the hurry?" Li Jinan carefully braided her hair into a beautiful twist. He then reached out and said, "Rubber band." Yi Yuyu handed the rubber band over. After Li Jinan carefully tied it up, he smiled with satisfaction. He looked at his little wife in the mirror and was happy and blissful. He leaned over and kissed her cheek. "My wife is so beautiful." Yi Yuyu looked proud. "Of course. Young and beautiful. Just like an 18-year-old. These words were half flattery and half truth. Yi Yuyu had taken good care of herself and was usually in a good mood. She was 37 this year. She didn't look much different from when he had first met her. "Humph." Yi Yuyu smirked. "You have a glib tongue. As long as you don't go out and lie to little girls, that's all. Let's go. Mom, Dad, and the kids are all waiting for us." When Li Jinan and Yi Yuyu walked out, everyone was seated at the table, waiting for the two of them to start eating. The square table at home had long been replaced by a larger round table. In the middle of the marble table was a turntable with a dazzling array of dishes on it. When they came out, the children immediately greeted them. "Uncle, Auntie." When Li Jinan saw Li Jianqian, he pointed his finger at him and remarked, "Good lad. You've grown up. You're even more handsome than your uncle." Li Jianqian wasn't embarrassed by the compliment and replied generously, "Uncle is still more handsome." Li Jinan laughed heartily. "You're a smart lad." He nudged Li Jianlin and said, "Learn from your older brother." Li Jianlin felt a little innocent. After a moment of silence he said, "I often scold people with my cousin in the game. I learned it all from him." Li Jianqian was speechless. Chapter 2173. Li Jianqian coughed softly without changing his expression. "Brother-in-law, I bring him along to play games, but I never scold anyone." Li Jianlin said in disdain, "That's right. You led him to a corner and got beaten up by a group of people. In the end, you went back to pick up his head and forced others to cheer you on. You're much worse than me." Li Jianqian did not deny it and said, "Brother-in-law, look, he learned to scold people himself. Isn't it too much to blame me?" Li Jianlin was speechless. "All right, it's time to eat," Qin Shuhua said with a smile. She scooped a bowl of soup for Yu Chulin and said, "Chu, are you coming to Kingstown with Desu to study?" Yu Chulin politely took the bowl and nodded his head. "Yes, Grandma. Jianqian is studying finance, and I'm studying philosophy." "Philosophy?" Li Xiao was interested. "Are you interested in this?" Yu Chulin nodded his head and explained politely. Li Xiao and Qin Shuhua had a good impression of him as he addressed them as Grandpa and Grandma. Li Mosen looked at him and quietly put food into Li Jianyue's bowl. He said, "You like prawns. Eat more." Li Jianyue agreed, but she did not forget to look at Yu Chulin. Her eyes were sparkling and she occasionally chimed in with interest. Li Mosen was a little jealous, but he did not do anything inappropriate. Li Moyun stretched out his arms and started eating. Just as he was eating with a satisfied look on his face, Li Mosen stared straight at him. Li Moyun felt goosebumps and asked, "Brother Mosen, are you jealous of my handsomeness?" Li Mosen was silent for a moment and said seriously, "I'm thinking, can you digest so much meat?" "I can digest it," Li Jianyue said. "It's just that it accumulates heat and becomes subcutaneous fat, turning into the lumps of fat on his body." As she said that, the children at the dining table laughed. Li Moyun blushed and muttered, "I didn't eat a lot." Although he said that, he still put down his chopsticks. When Qin Shuhua saw this, she was unhappy. She smacked him and said, "If you want to eat, eat. You're still young. You're chubby and cute. When you grow up, you'll naturally slim down." Yes, that was what Qin Shuhua had always told him. However, there were no signs of him growing taller or thinner. Instead, he was growing more and more horizontally. But when he saw the table full of good dishes, he couldn't help but want to move his thumb. Li Xiao glanced at them and said, "Jianlin and Moyun aren't young anymore. Since they're both at home, they should train with me from now on." Ha! Li Jianlin looked up with a look of surprise on his face, followed by a look of sorrow. "What?" Li Moyun was even more direct. He pulled a long face and said, "Grandfather, you can't abuse children." "How is he abusing a child?" Li Xiao could not help but laugh and said, "Your grandfather is kind. Don't you ask your uncle how their grandfather treated them back then?" Li Moyun had long heard about it. Unfortunately, by the time he was sensible, his great-grandfather had already passed away and he didn't have the chance to see him in person. When he heard Li Xiao's words, Li Moyun said, "What can I do? My grandfather is kinder than his grandfather. It's my blessing." Li Xiao was elated by the compliment and laughed heartily. He said, "Come on, eat more. It'll be easier to train after eating." Chapter 2174. Hearing the little fellow's words, everyone laughed in unison. The 3 generations of the Li family lived under the same roof. Unfortunately, Li Xiqing traveled around the world with his wife. Li Beixing and Qiu Manyu were also busy in the military camp with the child. But even so, it didn't affect Li Xiao and Qin Shuhua's good mood. After the meal, Li Jianyue sensibly helped Lu Sa clean up. The boys, on the other hand, were busy playing, messing around, learning, and sucking up to her. Lu Sa didn't reject Li Jianyue's thoughtfulness. The child was still young and needed to practice a lot of things. Li Jianyue didn't have any burdens and called her Lu Sa. While Li Jianyue was helping to wash the dishes, Lu Sa was washing the fruits. She walked over and whispered to Li Jianyue, "Miss, Chu seems to come every year." Li Jianyue didn't look up and said, "Yes, he's going to study in Kingstown this year. He's with my brother. I think he looks good. He seems to like you," Lu Sa said mysteriously. "His family seems to be quite powerful. He's fair and tall. He doesn't look like the kind of guy who can't take hardship." When Li Jianyue heard Lu Sa's praise, she immediately sensed something and asked warily, "What do you want?" "I think he's not bad. I heard he's 2 years older than you. He's also a genius." "Humph," Li Jianyue said. Although Li Jianyue was a little stupid, she was not stupid. She immediately said, "Lu Sa, don't try to matchmake. Brother Chu and my brother are good friends. We've known each other since we were young. It's impossible for us to have that kind of development. Besides," Li Jianyue said and lowered her voice. "Besides, my parents won't let me fall in love at such a young age." "Puppy love?" Lu Sa looked reproachful. "How can that be called puppy love? In the past, when you were your age, children were already running around." Li Jianyue pouted and muttered, "You're talking about ancient times, right?" "It was the same in my era," Lu Sa disagreed. "But it's good to listen to your parents. I just feel that it's a pity for Chu. He's such a good kid, and he's in a favorable position. Let's take him down first." "Sixth grandma," a young man's voice rang out, sounding a little deep. "Where should I put the fruit knife?" Li Jianyue turned around and saw Li Mosen looking at Lu Sa with an unhappy expression. As if sensing Li Genue's gaze, Li Mosen quickly shifted his gaze to look at her. His azure blue eyes were slightly gloomy and there was no smile on his face. Li Mosen had always looked amiable. It was rare for him to be like this. Li Genue couldn't help but ask, "Brother Mosen, who provoked you?" Li Mosen seemed to realize that he had lost his composure. He smiled and said, "It's nothing. I just felt that I was too full just now. My stomach feels uncomfortable." "Then why do you need a fruit knife?" "To peel an apple." "I heard that when you peel an apple, the apple skin will not fall off from the beginning to the end. If you make a wish, it will come true," Li Mosen said seriously, but Li Genue was shocked. She felt even more surprised and asked, "Why do you still believe this?" Li Mosen's expression didn't change. He said, "I'd rather believe it." "Can't you play a little more exciting?" "That gluttonous snake?" F***CK. Li Moyun stood up and lectured them with a serious look on his face. "We're young people of the new era. We can't be so outdated. Let's go play. "I won't." "Then what can you do?" "I will also be a miracle, Nuanyuan." Li Moyun's heart ached. He held onto the sofa and looked at Li Jianlin with a pained expression. "You really know how to chat." Li Jianlin didn't even look up as he replied, "Thank you." "Jianlin, I just don't want to play with you, stupid fatso." Chapter 2176. Li Moyun was speechless. His good mood was not affected even though he was rejected by Jianlin. He eagerly went to look for Li Jianqian and found him filling in some application information on the computer. He went to look for Yu Chulin. Yu Chulin was on the phone and when he saw him, he made a shushing gesture. After one round, Li Moyun felt a little defeated. He looked back at the coffee table and saw Li Mosen peeling an apple. One by one, the apples were peeled and cut into pieces and quietly soaked in salt water. Li Moyun walked up and picked up a toothpick to poke a piece. He asked, "Brother Mosen, why are you peeling so many apples?" "Eating." Li Mosen did not look up as he carefully peeled the apple. Li Moyun saw a long strip of skin hanging down and reached out to pull it off. Suddenly, Li Mosen turned around and avoided his hand. He said coldly, "If you break it, I'll break your leg." Li Moyun was shocked and said, "How can you do this? Can't you be a good brother?" Li Mosen glanced at him. "Do you want to try?" Li Moyun stuffed the apple into his mouth. "You tyrant." Although he said that, he stared at the apple skin and said, "If you're done, can you carry me to play games?" "No. I've been practicing Oriana recently and it's very good. Carry me." "No. Then I'll look for Sister Ursu to play Honor of Kings. Carry us." Li Mosen finally looked up and glanced at him. "If she plays, I'll carry you." "All right." Li Moyun immediately stood up and shouted, "Sister Ursu, Brother Mosen said he'll carry us." Ursu said, "Coming." The group of people played for the whole afternoon. Suddenly, Nanny Rong's surprised voice came from outside. "You're back." As soon as he said that, many people turned to look at him. A tall figure wearing simple dark casual clothes appeared. His eyebrows and facial features were flawlessly handsome. Time did not leave many traces on his face. His facial features were even more defined and better looking than they were a decade ago. Behind Li Xiqing, Su Qianxi walked in beautiful high heels. She was wearing a light green long chiffon dress and looked like a fairy. Her long hair draped over her shoulders, and her temperament was gentle and refined. She was truly an elegant and dignified lady. Seeing the room full of children, Su Qianxi was pleasantly surprised. "Daddy, Mom." Li Moyun ran over pitifully and shouted, "I missed you so much." Li Moyun was almost as tall as Su Qianxi, and his body was a little broad. When he hugged Su Qianxi, he almost took a step back. However, before Li Moyun could warm up to her, he was dragged away by a large hand. He warned seriously, "Don't hug my wife. Be more respectful." Li Moyun felt that he was being ostracized and felt even more aggrieved. He shouted, "That's my mother." "I am your father." Li Xiqing let go of him, glanced at him, and then swaggered inside with his wife. Xueqi was a little embarrassed to be stared at by a room full of children. She pulled his hand and said, "There are so many children here. Restrain yourself." "How?" Li Xiqing looked down at her. After so many years, they should be used to it. Xueqi's skin was still fair and crystal clear. She had taken good care of herself. Chapter 2177. When Xueqi heard Li Xiqing's words, she patted him. Li Xiqing's lips curled up as he glanced at the group of children in the living room. Everyone looked at Li Xiqing and the others. Li Mosen put down the fruit knife in his hand and Li Zhenqian put down the computer. "Dad, Mom." Yu Chulin greeted, "Hello, Uncle, Auntie." Oh Xiao greeted, "Godfather, Godmother." Li Zhenlin greeted, "Second Uncle, Second Auntie." Li Zhenrui was much more direct. She threw her phone on the sofa and rushed toward Xueqi, shouting happily, "Mom!" She shouted loudly, and her laughter was crisp and cheerful. Li Zhenrui hugged Xueqi tightly and then Li Xiqing saying, "You're finally back. I missed you so much." Li Xiqing looked at his daughter who was almost the same height as Xueqi and deliberately said with a straight face, "How old are you? Why are you so rash?" Li Zhenrui smiled and asked, "Did you bring any gifts?" "Yes." Xueqi looked at her daughter reproachfully and then looked back. The chauffeur had already brought the things in and asked, "Sir, madam, where should we put them?" "Put them here." Xueqi walked forward and said, "These 2 boxes are gifts for you." The group of children rushed forward and Xueqi took out the gifts one by one and counted, "This is Ursu's dress." "Ah, Mom is the best." "This is a record for Daesu. Haven't you always wanted a collector's edition of this record? I found it." Li Zhenqian said, "Thank you, Mom." "Moyun, this is the model you wanted." Li Moyun almost jumped up and shouted, "Long live Mom! Mom, I love you." Li Xiqing looked at the kid and frowned. He knocked his head and said, "Look at how fat you have become." Li Moyun shrunk his head back and smiled cheekily. Xueqi smiled and quickly said, Xiao, this is the princess dress you wanted. It even has an autograph." Oh Xiao was very surprised and said, "Thank you, Godmother." "Mosen, this is the limited edition sneaker that you have always wanted." Xueqi took out a shoe and said, "Your father specially queued to buy it and almost couldn't get it." Li Mosen's eyes lit up, and he quickly went forward to take it. Looking at the shoes lying quietly inside, every part of them was exquisitely made. Li Mosen smiled and said, "Thank you, Dad." "Thank you, Mom." Li Xiqing walked up and gestured at him. "You're taller than me. Try playing basketball later." "Okay." It was rare for Li Mosen to be so happy. He smiled, revealing a row of white teeth. Li Zhenrui came forward and took a look. She said in surprise, "Wow, sneakers can look so good. Brother Mosen, let me see." Me too. Oh Xiao came over. Li Moyun immediately clapped his hands and joined in the fun. "I want to watch too. What does he look like? Is it the pair that won the sneaker award this year?" Yu Chulin also came forward, his eyes full of interest. Li Mosen was a little smug and said, No. Don't break it." Although he said that, he still took out the shoes. "So handsome." Li Moyun's eyes lit up. "Mom, why didn't you buy me a pair too? It's so beautiful. It's a limited edition. There are only 5 pairs of each size. There's no size for you." Li Xiqing mercilessly broke his dream. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.